Hey everybody, it's John Bell, and this is the Harbinger Report. And sorry, I haven't done a show in a while. Super busy. I'm trying to prepare to move, and that's taking up all my free time. So just throwing that out there. Please be patient with me. I'll try to do the best I can, and trying to prepare for some really good upcoming shows. I've been reaching out to some guests. Unfortunately, I just had one big guest that I really wanted to decline on me. He's no longer doing interviews anymore. I just caught him a little bit too late, but I've been in contact with him for years, and he is brilliant at what he does, and I'm going to be covering his material in an upcoming show relatively soon. So tonight's a little different. You see, I got a different sign in the background because tonight's show is about modern warfare, and it's going to be taking more of a political bent than I normally do, but that's because we're in such a crisis in our country right now. I mean, we are literally on the verge of World War III, which, by the way, I claim that World War III has officially started already. It's not a matter as if it's going to happen. It's already started. We're in it. We're in it. Buckle up. We're in it. It's only a matter of time before it goes hot, and it becomes really bad for everybody, especially for the U.S. Especially if you look at this from any kind of biblical or prophetic sign, and you listen to what people with prophetic gifts are saying, where they're all saying pretty much the same thing right now, and that's pretty much judgment for America. All right, so um, it's not pretty. I would be praying very hard right now if you are so inclined and a person of prayer. But we've got a lot to cover, and there's no way I can really do this topic justice. It's just too much information. There's too much going on. There's too many angles. But I'm going to try my best to cover some things that I think are important and need to be addressed or talked about. This is so important. I mean, there's no other subject that's more important. There's other subjects that might be more entertaining, but there's no subject more important to deal with in our time than this subject right now. And that's why I thought with the different topics we cover on this show, this is one that has to be done. This is one that has to be discussed and brought out. Um, while there's time to, be able to have change or make change or cause effect. All right. So I got a few notes here, and basically, so you see the poster or the thumbnail of the show is I emulated, the uh, the video game Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And by the way, that's my own picture I created. I did not take that from the video game series or any of their pictures. Just to throw that out there, fair use. And I did change the wording, so legally by 20%, 25%, you can do that. So should be within legal parameters for anyone that might be crybabying about that kind of stuff. Since we live in the culture of I got to suck on my bibby and cry about everything because everything is offensive to my little sensitivities because I'm a special, unique little snowflake. All right. Yeah. Put that in the sun and see how long it lasts. Right. Anyway, but the reason I chose to use the parody on that video game um, is because there's a concept going on that I don't know that a lot of people have a strong grasp of, and that is modern warfare. Modern warfare is not like warfare in the past as much. It's advanced. It's different. There's advanced tools now. We've advanced psychologically and in psychological operations as well as technology. So it's a different world. It's a different playing field, and so war's not going to look the same as it did in the past, where people can galvanize together when they see that hey, we're under attack. It's not like that now. Now the way war is done is it's like the boiling frog in the pot. Whereas if the pot's too hot, the frog just jumps out. But if you slow cook it, that little sucker will almost swore. That little sucker will make frog legs, which are pretty good. Taste like chicken in Louisiana. But anyway, that said, So it's more subtle, and people don't always realize it, and it's been going on for a long time. And I would argue things like immigration right now. It's an absolute. It's a weapon of war that's being used against the American people in our country. All right. That's not to say that immigration is bad. I'm pro-immigration, but I'm also pro-legal immigration. Also, I'm not pro one-sided immigration. It should be just as easy for different races and different cultures to come here than just one or two, or preferred treatments like, military aged men and non-Christians, you know, that's agenda. That's not any kind of equality. And I'm for legal immigration, which means we follow the laws we've already created in our country. Basically, what we're doing in our country is we're ignoring our laws. And you're wanting to enforce laws in one area while the government completely ignores the laws in other areas. That doesn't work. That's the breakdown of law. All right. It's the breakdown of society. To quote Ronald Reagan, if you can't control your borders, you don't have a country, you don't have a nation. That's huge. And if you look at many other countries, you illegally go into their countries. Hey, it's prison. Period. It's hard labor. It's bad. It's ugly. It's not like this new weapon that's being given across the Western world right now. It's not just the U.S. This is going on in Germany. It's going on in Europe. It's going on in Canada. It's going on in France. All the West right now is being targeted and attacked. And this is all a byproduct, I claim, of the 20-year war that no one wanted in the Middle East to destabilize these countries, that in Africa. And then now we've used that crisis that we created to then create a migrant crisis. And in that crisis, the UN has its own pages. See if I can pull it up real quick. The UN has its own pages. All right. This is a UN PDF talking about replacement migration. Now, let those words sink in. Replacement migration. What do you think that means? That means we're going to eliminate cultures by flooding it with other cultures. All right. So that's what that means. Here's another article from the UN's website. New report on replacement migration. And I take it a step further and call it what it actually is, which is weaponized replacement migration, because it's being used as a weapon against not just the US, but it's being used against the entire West. All right. And if you listen to the globalists, like the Carl Schwab types, the World Economic Forum, all right, Davos, Bilderberg, you listen to these groups and these people, these power elites, and that's another heavy topic we're going to be getting into, is the concept of the globalist elite leadership in our world that controls the US and most countries right now. All right. But if you listen to them, they outright say their goal is to use replacement migration, weaponized replacement migration, to get rid of all white people, the white Anglo-Saxon Caucasian race, simply by breeding them out. All right. And 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 also at the same time, a goal in doing so is to remove Christianity. Remove Christianity. They believe that the white Caucasian race, for whatever, is a stronghold of Christianity, and they can remove both. All right. And so that's what they're doing. That's why you see right now every television show, every movie has to be a mixed races now. And I'm not against mixed races. If mixed races love each other, and it's genuine, it's authentic. Hey, I'm all for it. The problem is when that's being forced, all right, on the culture through movies, through television, through government, through all kinds of through UN directives, and even mixed race departments that they call, what was this thing they call? They have a whole division called Let's see, new UN report on placement migration issued by UN Population Division. So they have a UN Population Division. And what's the purpose of the UN Population Division? Replacement migration. All right. That makes it racist. That makes it evil. When you are singling out one race, all right, to eliminate, that's evil. I don't care what race it is. Doesn't matter if it's white, whatever race, whatever color, it's evil. That should not be done to any race. All right. And that's what we're seeing right now. Heck, in film and television, they have strict rules now for half the cast has to be of a different color, half the cast has to be female, half the roles have to be female, have all this is and that's another thing too, the whole boss woman thing. And it's not to say that you can't have strong women, but man, everything, I'm so saturated and sick of the in your face boss woman where you have a 90 pound to 110-pound woman who beats up every guy in the room in some special forces thing. Yeah, that is like the most unrealistic thing in planet Earth. In fact, recently I just saw an article on an MMA event where they took two female MMA fighters against one average MMA male, and he destroyed him. I mean, absolutely destroyed him. Because the truth is, God created us differently. Now, that's not God created men to be physically stronger. However, women have other attributes that men do not have. And it's not to say one is better and one is less. No, the key is both have what the other need to survive. Both have what each other need. We need each other. I think someone quoted one time saying, without women, there would be no such thing as peace on planet Earth. You know what I'm saying? Because um, the female nature has a way of bringing calmness to the men's warring side, which is built into men because that's part of their role. Their role is to be the defender, you know. And we live in a society today where it tries to say it's trying to make the girl boss out of everything in everything, all right, which is getting really old really fast, all right. And again, I'm not against any strong women characters. I'm against agenda. That's the problem. All right. And then at the same time, now you have to take all men and make them weak. You have to make them either weak, oppressors, evil, or just cucks. All right. If you don't know what that word is, look it up. Cuckold, cuck, where a man is basically feminized. All right. His masculinity is taken away from him for one way or another. Okay, and this is all a part of the weaponized um, um, replacement migration. All right, it's twofold. It's not just physical replacing with migrants, but it's also in their cultures. But it's also the idea of removing the idea of what femininity and female is, and replacing it with something that's not authentic and wrong. And then we're going to replace masculinity and maleness with toxic masculinity. Really, um, that's not the case, and it's not the way God created us. um, and God created two genders. That's it. So deal with him. We're born with physical parts. We have a thing called chromosomes, X and Y. Figure what that is. Figure what that is. That there's not 300 different genders. I'm sorry. That's. It seems like today they're trying to normalize mental illness. You know, it's like the inmates are running the asylum instead of the authority. It's crazy, but mental illness is running rampant. In fact, there was a saint quoted one time, centuries ago, who said there's going to be a time that comes in the future when everyone's going to be mad, and they're going to say they're going to find someone who's not mad and say, hey, you're not mad. We have to like do away with you because you're not mad. You're not like one of us. And we're quickly approaching that time now where in society good is called wrong and wrong is called good. And today, more and more, you're seeing Christianity being not just um, lessened in a lot of ways and removed in a lot of ways. But now you're seeing outright attacks against Christianity. And in media and in entertainment, you're not allowed to attack people's uh, races unless, and they're not allowed to attack their races unless they're white. Then it's open bar, open season. And you can't attack people's religion unless it's Christianity. Then you can make fun of it, Jesus, all you want, you know. So we have double standards, and these double standards are a part of this weaponized replacement migration. And they use the biggest tool they use is psychological tactics, and that's why they control entertainment. That's for that purpose. And they don't care as much about controlling the older people. They want to manipulate and control the young. Hitler said, "Give me a camera and the youth, and I'll change the world." Mein Kampf. Okay, paraphrasing, but you get the idea. Well, they're taking that literally. All right, they're targeting the youth. That's why shows, especially targeting young, have to portray certain agendas. Okay. Um, so now, who's behind this? All right, and this is a complicated kind of question, but as an oversimplification to try to get this across, and I've been preaching this one for like over 20 years. This is what and now people are starting to catch on, even to the term I've been using, only because I think it makes sense, you know. But that said, I call the ones behind this. Now there's several groups behind this, and ultimately, you're talking about that triangle thing with the the all-seeing eye at the top of the triangle. Okay, that's ultimately what's going on here. Okay, and but I call these globalists. And the reason why I try to use the phrase globalists to kind of pigeonhole the majority of these groups into and different factions into one term, um, is so that you just have an idea of how to grasp it. It's several factions that would make up basically what we refer to as the global power elites. All right, world leaders and of the such. One thing I'll point out, just from a Christian standpoint, that is, when Jesus was tempted in the desert by the devil, one of the last temptations the devil showed him, he says, look, he showed him all the power of the world. And he said that this has been given over to me, to the devil. And he says, if you will bow down and worship me, bend the knee before me, I will give you all the wealth and power of the world to rule. All right. And of course, we know that Jesus didn't accept that. That said, though, it makes a very important point, and that is it's the devil that controls world power. Ultimately, it's been given over to his hands by God for a purpose. For a purpose. It's not because God doesn't know what he's doing or is vindictive or isn't loving or whatever. It's for a purpose. And if God's doing it, it's for a very good purpose. A greater good will come out of the evil. That's how God often works. But that said, if the devil controls world power, what kind of people do you think that the devil chooses to make world leaders? People that are going to do his will, his plan, and his agenda. And part of that plan is taking us down the path of self destruction. Any path of the devil leads to self destruction for you, for your family, for your community, for your society, for your country, for the world. And that's the path we're on right now. It's the path of self destruction. And here's the crazy kicker. I mean, how many examples do we need this from history? It doesn't take long in studying history and world powers to see that they all started with a moral decline. A moral decline. And if you read the writings of the globalists, they actually said, like in the 50s, 40s, and 50s, we've got to create a moral vacuum in the US so that we can push our agenda. All right. So that we can accomplish our goals. See, the more they can, I did a thing recently, a show recently on exorcisms, and I tried to make a point in there how one of the world's leading exorcists is saying that demons, high level demons, are harder to exorcise now than they used to be. What used to take a couple of months now can take a couple of years to exorcise a higher level demon from somebody in real heavy cases of possession. Why is that? And he makes the point. You can go back and see the show I did on exorcism, where I talk about that more. But the exorcist is making the point that it's the church that has the power, that's called the eschaton, right? That holds back the power of the devil. The more the church is weakened, the more power the devil has over you, over society. Okay? So that's what it comes to. The devil has to attack the church, has to attack the Christianity so that it can grow stronger. All right? And eventually God destroyed the earth with Noah's flood, right? Well, and then he started over. I call it God's great reset, kind of like Carl Schwab's talking about, his plan for a great reset, um, which is evil. God had a great reset. And we started over. He destroyed the earth because of how evil it had become, how evil mankind had become. Now, part of that was because of the corruption of the devil and the fallen angels. And that's part of the reason why God gave us a second chance, if you will. All right. But God destroyed the earth with the flood. I always use one of my favorite devices. I've got the cuneiform tablet from Gilgamesh, which actually that tablet talks about, it records Noah's flood from a secular source, which is amazing. But anyway, that said, what happens is evil comes full circle. And I try to talk about this in the episode I did on the eclipse, all right, on the coming eclipse, and how that's a foreshadowing of biblical prophecy for the destruction of the US. How the path of the eclipse went across several states from Texas to Canada, and it went across 9 cities specifically named Nineveh. All right. And this tablet, I'm knocking everything down. This cuneiform tablet, which I always talk about, actually, I think this is up. This cuneiform tablet, which is from Nineveh, it was found in the library of Nineveh. All right. And this is written in Sanskrit. All right. Ancient Sumerian. All right. So it was from an older time than Nineveh. All right. Ancient Samaria, the time of Ur. All right. That predates Nineveh. All right. And these tablets, there were like thousands of these clay tablets that were found in the library in the city of Nineveh. Nineveh is where God sent Jonah and the whale. Remember that whole story? And people are like, well, God spared Nineveh. No, he didn't. God sent Jonah to preach to Nineveh. Jonah didn't want to go because he didn't like the Ninevites. So he tried to escape God's will on the boat. They came into storms that almost capsized the boat. Seamen always tend to be very superstitious people. They figured, oh, we've angered the gods and something must be wrong. And then Jonah said, well, it's me because I'm running from what God told me to do. So they threw him off the boat. He gets swallowed by the whale. Goes down in the whale's mouth, stomach, whatever, into the bottom of the earth for 3 days, comes back and says, you know what? I think I've had a change of heart. I might just go to Nineveh and do what God asked me to do after all. So he goes to Nineveh and he preaches to Nineveh and says that God has warned he's going to destroy Nineveh unless they convert and change their ways back to God. So what did the city do? And the leaders, they took Jonah's word and they converted, and God spared Nineveh. But it wasn't very long until they reverted right back to their original ways, and God wiped them out, destroyed them. Right. But it was in the library there that we found the cuneiform tablets of the book of Gilgamesh, the ancient book of Gilgamesh. All right. And on this particular tablet of that is recorded Noah's flood. That's why it's significant. That's why I have it. But here's the point in that. So we've come full circle. God destroyed the earth because of the evil of mankind was so bad in that time, in that day. But we've come full circle, right? Full circle to returning to that evil today in our time. And the result will be the same. The result will be the same. God is going to destroy the earth a second time. But instead of this time, instead of with water, God is going to destroy it with fire. All right. Um, there's several prophecies about that. Even if you want to look up Isaiah 13, you want to look up Malachi chapter 4. All right. And Isaiah 13, um, and Isaiah 13, I love Zippos. I love just playing with them. In Isaiah 13, God says, I will make mankind more rare than the finest gold upon the whole planet. In Malachi chapter 4, he reiterates Isaiah 13 and he says, I will destroy the earth with fire. I will burn them up, says the Lord of hosts, leaving nor branch nor root left behind. All right. And so there are biblical prophecies and teachings, and on Catholic source, there's a whole another side to that. You've got Marian apparitions that say that God's going to destroy the earth with fire. Church approved apparitions, by the way. You've got saints. Saint Padre Pio said, God first destroyed the earth with water. He will destroy the second time with fire. You've got Saint Faustina, who says, God's given the earth a small, brief time of divine mercy, but after that comes the time of justice, and when the earth will be punished. And again, Isaiah 13 describes the justice of the Lord. Isaiah 61, when Jesus started his public ministry, he went in the temple, he picks up the scroll, he opens it up to read the scroll in front of everybody, and it's Isaiah 61, and he says, I'm the anointed of the Lord. I've come to free the captives, give sight to the blind, to free the prisoners, and to declare the good day of the Lord's favor, which was what? To declare the good news. That was the whole ministry of Christ. He came to declare the good news. What's the good news? The good news is that mankind is now reconciled with God, which meant because of the coming of Christ, the kingdom of heaven was opened to humanity. Because prior to Jesus coming and suffering on the cross, heaven was closed to all humans and all humanity. No one could enter heaven until that point. And that's why it was the good news. Man is reconciled unto God because Jesus came to pay the price that we as humans did not have the ability to pay. Now, that's going down the theological track, and I don't want to go too deep down that. I can try to cover those issues in other shows if people want. But to try and stay on topic, I just want to cover that stuff lightly because it's so important. All right. So, but when Jesus read Isaiah 61 and he said that to declare the good day of the Lord's favor, he stopped, comma. The next line is, and to declare the terrible day of the Lord. The terrible day of the Lord's coming. The great day of the Lord. The day of God's justice. The day of God's wrath. It's all the same. The day of the Lord. Jesus said that he came to declare the good day of the Lord. And now I'm getting chills on my whole body, which I always take as a sign in the Holy Spirit as truth. Now we're coming into the time, we're transitioning into the time of the terrible day of the Lord, where mankind will face God's justice. And how is this done? How is this done? If you look at salvation history, it goes like this. A, man sins against God and grows a hardened heart and turns his back on God. B, God punishes mankind, his people specifically, by handing them to be conquered and made slaves by his own enemies, by the hand of his own enemies. He uses his enemies to punish his own people. All right. C, under persecution and tyranny and slavery, mankind gets a softened heart, turns back to the love of their creator. God saves man. Boom. That's salvation history. That's what happened with Noah. I mean, that's what happened with Moses and with Ramses II in Egypt. Remember, the Hebrews were slaves. God called them out of slavery to start their own nation. They built the first temple in Jerusalem. That first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. Was it 72 AD, I believe? It was destroyed by the Babylonians, and they were taken, God's people were taken into slavery, right, in Babylon. They were finally released and built the second temple in Jerusalem. And the second temple was destroyed by the Romans under Titus Diocletian. Okay. Um, and what was that? 58 AD? I don't know. My theology classes are a long time off. But then the second temple was destroyed as Jesus prophesied was going to happen, and it wasn't long after Jesus that prophecy was fulfilled and the temple was destroyed. Now we're looking at the temple being rebuilt for a third time, and I claim that's why you're seeing the Palestinian genocide that's going on at this moment. All right. There was an article this morning I forgot to add. I wanted to add where there that said today. It said in the article. Um, that leaders were telling the Israelis to do away with Christian values and morality and create a complete genocide so that they could take Gaza. I was like, wow, that's heavy language. Yeah, that's very harsh language. Um, I'm not for the Palestinians. I don't care for Islam as a whole for many reasons. It doesn't mean that Islamic people are bad. I'm sure there's many good ones, but I've got a problem with forced religions that force violence and force. And I don't care what anyone says. If you read the Quran, they say it's a religion that you force the infidel to be. You offer them Islam. If they refuse, you offer them the sword to cut their head off. That's what the Quran teaches. Anyone that debates that either isn't following what the Quran teaches, or well, now you can't. There is sects of Islam that take that in a militant way, and then you've got sects that take that in a non-militant way. And but you cannot have peace with a group that says they're here to kill you and your families and your religion. It doesn't work that way. That's why we should not be bringing these people into our country. Because if you listen to what they're saying, what their imams are telling them, they're saying that they're on a jihad war to come here and conquer us and to destroy us, to remove any faith that's not their own, all faiths that are not their own, uh, and um, and to take over governments and everything else, and by force. So that's a problem. That's part of the whole. And I've got quotes I've shown on other shows. I should have added it to this one, where I show that. Yeah, Albert Pike said that they were going to they were conspiring to create World War I, World War II, and World War III. And in World War III, they were going to have an Islamic war against Christianity. That they were orchestrating this, that they were using the Islamicists as a tool to attack and destroy Christianity as a weapon. And they were just manipulating them to do so because when you're full of hate and anger, it's easy to be manipulated or to manipulate somebody like that. Not saying all are like that, but there does seem to be a large majority that are riled up to that way very easily in that. I'm all for peace. I'm all for all cultures as long as we can we don't always have to believe the same thing. And as long as we believe in human life is valuable and we can work with each other and but part of the weaponized migration is to destabilize the values of this country and to bring in things like Sharia law and force it on American citizens like they're trying to do in other countries. Look at what's going on in England right now, where you have Muslims taking over in government and parliament, and it's getting bad. It's taking over. You have not only that, you have parts of England now in the weaponized replacement migration where 80% of the children being born are Muslim. They're not British. And what happens to your culture at that time? It's gone. You don't have it anymore. And that's the purpose. That's why it's a weapon. And same things happening in Sweden, other countries. Um, so it's a major problem. I often say I went to visit a friend of mine in Canada just before the lockdowns, and I was blown away. I didn't see any Canadians in Canada. All I saw was Chinese, Muslims, and Eastern Indians, and they were taking over everything. And my Canadian friend was walking me down the street of his neighborhood where he grew up, and he was crying, tears coming out of his eyes, telling me how his whole all of his Canadian citizens and brotherhood had been forced out by these immigrants, and the government gives a preferential treatment to the immigrants and persecutes the citizens. Not only that, they had to warn me when I got there because I tend to be pretty open with my opinion which, that's called being American and having a First Amendment right here. But they had to warn me in their country to watch what you say, because they have a law there that if you say anything that offends an immigrant, you go to jail. You get arrested, you go to jail. And here's the crazy thing, it's so subjective. You don't even have to have said anything to actually offend them. If they just assume that you're offending them, you go to jail. You meet the criteria of the law and you go to jail. Now, the government passed that so that the Canadians shut the hell up and don't complain, which they tend to be passive people anyway, while they're being run off and run out for the immigrants to come in and take over their country. That's evil. That's just evil, you know? Anyway, so getting back to the concept of globalists, a globalist, by definition, or by my definition, are leaders placed in strategic positions of power, all right, or uh, because of economic wealth, have large amounts of power they can wield, like Rothschilds, Rockefellers, that really control governments. I mean, Rothschilds control like England and the EU, where the Rockefellers, lieutenants to the Rothschilds, control almost everything that happens in the United States. They're the ones that created the coal industry that everyone was dependent on for energy back in the day. And then they switched gears and created big pharma. Watch Fox News and CNN sometime and see what every single commercial is about. See who's funding the news and what you're being reported on. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So, by the way, pharmakia in the ancient Greek, which I've got a Septuagint in Greek right here, means sorcery, witchcraft. All right. And the Bible specifically tells Christians avoid sorcery. Avoid sorcery. All right. There's a big thing to figure out with that. And I can't go any further. All right. But you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. You can figure out the rest for your own. I have faith in you. Now, so a globalist is a either a wealthy person, and we're talking like wealthy, that they control politicians and governments wealthy, or corporations, same thing, or politicians. All right, not all politicians, but many. And the term globalist means, in an oversimplified, easy to understand uh, to way to understand it, is globalism means those who don't have, how do you say this, they don't care about their own country and their own government as much as the real goal and agenda is to create a global government, a global agenda. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So they might be leaders of different countries, like say the U.S., and we absolutely fit this 100%. The political leaders we have now are globalists. They don't care about America first, or nationalism, or net pride, or sustainability. They don't care about our economy. What they care about is destroying the United States so that they can accomplish their true desire and goal of creating a one world government, a new world order. And that is what the Great Reset is all about. And much of it is talked about in this book. I suggest you get it. It's on Amazon. Buy it. And it was written by Carl Schwab and another author. But anyway, so that's what I mean by globalists. So if you look at our government today in America, look at the leaders and how they behave. I mean, the Bible says you judge a tree by its fruit. So look at the fruit of the leadership in our country right now. They're turning off coal. They're turning off power. They blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And yes, that was done by us, the US. All right. We blame it on Russia or whoever. It was done by us. We did that. That's our fault. That's been proven. You can go look that up. I'm not getting into that now, but we're turning off power, oil. We sold much of our strategic oils supply, which basically is basic treason to our country. That's emergency for us if there was ever a problem, and we gave our emergency supply away to China, our enemy. Imagine that. You can't make this stuff up. It's insanity. It doesn't make sense any other way. And they're stopping trade, supply chains, and especially food supply. And they're wanting to move. Look at how they're buying up all the food. Why is one man with the last name that rhymes with hates? All right, because that's what he does, buying up all the farmland or the majority of the farmland in the United States. You think that's for a good reason? Oh, while they're also saying, "Oh, we're going to do away with cows. You're not going to eat meat anymore. In fact, you're going to be fed with insects." Like, who saw that movie, Snowpiercer, where they're feeding food cubes to all the poor people in the back of the train? And you know what they found out when they finally had a revolt and went to the forward of the train? That the food cubes they're being fed every day are nothing more than ground up cockroaches. And that's what our government says they want to feed us. They don't want Americans to have meat anymore. Meat bad, even though it's been good for, like, the entire history of the human race until now. And then now they're saying, "Oh, we're going to feed you insects." Oh, and lab grown meat. And by the way, that so-called lab grown meat that they keep talking about, you might want to look into that a little deeper. You know how that's made? It's made from tumors. Tumors. They're feeding you cancer, and they call it good for you. That's how they're growing it. They're growing cancer, tumors. Tumors. And that's what they want you to eat as food, as a replacement meat, instead of what God created with natural meat sources like cows, dairy, chickens, all this. I heard someone was saying in Australia right now, if you own one chicken, you have to have it registered with the government, or you can face a $5,000 fine a day. And that's where we're heading right here with this whole, we're doing away with farms and meat, and you're going to eat the bugs, eats the bugs, as Carl Schwab would say. All right. Look at the leadership here. The leadership here is becoming more and more authoritarian, more and more tyrannical, more and more communist, more and more socialist, more and more fascist, pick a ish, more and more Marxist. All right. Now, there is a large part of our population now that has been literally programmed in indoctrination camps called education and universities, all right, that are taken our young and indoctrinized them in the concepts of communism, socialism, Marxism, all the isms, okay, and anti-American, anti-patriot, anti-capitalism, right? Um, and so that's a major problem for our country, all right? I didn't realize when I was in college, I was studying criminal justice because I wanted to be a police officer, state trooper, um, which I later became. All right. Um, and I came to realize a criminal justice degree, even back then, what you meant a long time ago, there's only one semester difference than a sociology degree, which sociology degree is socialism. It's socialism. That's what it is. So in other words, they're training the cops to be socialists. That's the whole point of it. I stood up in my class one day. Now, you couldn't get away with this today, but I could back in my day when, our country was still ours and still American and with American values and ideals, which it's not today. I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's the truth. But I stood up and I told my professor, I said, "You are an effing communist." I said, "My grandfather fought in World War II and Korea to kill people that were communists because America was anti-communist." Now, I'm not advocating violence for anyone to kill anyone. I'm saying that that's what America used to stand for and why we went to war against the Nazis. Why we went to war was to kill communists. The America was very anti-communist. For a while, after the war, there were all these people were scared. Oh, is this a secret communist? And they would go after him. Look at the Oppenheimer movie that just came out, and you see about how communists infiltrated our government, especially amongst the intellectuals. And no wonder that all our universities now are communist education camps. Heck, China owns most of what is it? University of Austin Tech. What is it? They own most of the campus. The Chinese. All right. How? I mean, that's a problem. Okay. By the way, since I'm thinking about it, Dr. Phil on his show made an interesting analogy recently, or point, and that was how you've got all these military bases in the U.S. and China's buying all this farmland that just happens to be next to all these military bases that we have. You think that's an accident or a little quinky dink? No. I believe in conspiracy only because I believe in conspiracy truth, because conspiracy is the way in which it's the nature in which how evil operates. See, evil doesn't come to you and say, "Hi, I'm evil. I'm here to kill you." No, evil wouldn't survive that way. Evil operates behind the closed doors, in the secret meetings, in the secret societies, with the secret O's. Get what I'm saying there? Secret. Let me quote J.F. Kennedy here for a second. In a free and democratic society, and yes, we are supposed to be a republic, a constitutional republic at point, but to quote JFK, in a democratic society and free society, there should be no secret oaths, no secret organizations, no secret societies. Those are threats to freedom. They're threats to our government, our constitution, and to our people. And those societies are what run the United States and the world right now. All right. Easy to figure out who I'm talking about. All right. I've received death threats for talking about this stuff before, but you know what? I don't care. All of us have to die someday. Die as a hero. All right. Die with conviction, with bravery. Don't die as a little cucked bitch. All right. Die as a man. All right. That doesn't mean that women can't be brave too. There's been many in history that have been outstanding, like Joan of Arc. All right. There's many women I look up to and love as great leaders and warriors, really, even though they might have been warriors of peace, like Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Man, that woman was phenomenal. And she also predicted the destruction of the U.S. When she gave her acceptance speech I often talk about this, but it's worth repeating. When she gave her acceptance speech for winning the Nobel Prize, with the Clintons sitting right in front of her, mocking her, laughing at her, and mocking her, she said in the front row, she said this: "The fruit of abortion is nuclear war." That, I promise you, is a divine prophecy from God, delivered by that wonderful holy woman. That the fruit of abortion is nuclear war. God's going to bring judgment on the US. And God told me years ago that the United States was going to be destroyed in the near future. Told me this in 1996, 1997, somewhere in there. Told me that I was praying in church one day and God spoke to me and said that the United States is going to be destroyed in the near future. And he said it was his will that the United States is destroyed completely and it will not rebuild. It will not. There will be survivors, but it will never rebuild. It will never be the United States again. It'll never be the country of idealism and freedoms and free speech and all that we once had, took for granted, and let slip through our fingers like water because we didn't fight to defend it and stop it. And I'm not talking violence. I'm talking we didn't stand up and do our civic duty to watch government and politicians more. Eternal vigilance. All right. We didn't do our job, and that's why we failed. We allowed all the immorality, and that's why we failed. We've become too passive, and that's why we failed. Christianity is not being it's not being a pacifist. All right. That doesn't mean God wants us to be peacemakers. But when you're at war, you're at war. And right now, We're at war, and you can't win a war that you don't know you're in. That's why we're losing. That's why we lost. God also said that another reason, he said the reason why it was his will for the United States to be destroyed is because of the above all things, because of one reason and one reason only, and that was because of the sin of abortion, which is human sacrifice to Satan. We talk about how was it that people in the Old Testament sacrificed their children to the god Baal or Baal, Baal. All right, Baal, however you want to pronounce it. We do the same thing today. We sacrifice our children, and that's a great evil before God, and it absolutely should not be done. You cannot kill the innocent and claim that you're good in any other path. All right, we have to, our goal, we must defend life. We must defend the innocent, and there's no greater example of that than our children. And our children are holy and pure until they become corrupted by the world. Again, because we haven't done our job. But anyway, so I gave the concept of the globalist. All right. Right now, the globalists control our country. They seized power, and it wasn't just the last election that took place. I claim if you go back to JFK, all right, that's where things really got hot. They infiltrated key positions of power and authority, but they went all in on JFK. You know, we're taught, I've used this example before, but it's really good. In law enforcement, we're taught that when you do a shooting, we were forced that you have to scan for other targets after you've eliminated the threat. All right, as a police officer, because it's intuitive not to do that. It's anti-intuitive. See, when you get into a great traumatic crisis like a shooting, you go through a physiological chemical change in your body. Your eyesight becomes more acute. All right, you get like a laser focus. Your eyesight improves, but you lose peripheral vision as that takes place. Okay, so you get laser focused on the threat. All right, but you don't see that there's possibly other threats on the outside. And we had officers that were getting hurt or killed that way. So we had to train ourselves that after a police officer deals with the threat, they scan to look for other threats. All right. It's the same thing. I use the same analogy with the JFK assassination. Okay. JFK, a beloved president, a young, very popular, but well liked and beloved president by the people. And if you listen to his talks and everything, it's hard. It's easy to understand why. He was a phenomenal person. Not saying he was a perfect person. He had a lot of vice and problems, like we all do. But he tried to be a real president. All right. Um, they picked him. The globalists at that time picked him because they thought he could be controlled and manipulated because he was a womanizer, because he was involved in prohibition and smuggling alcohol during prohibition and working even with mafias to smuggle. His family was doing this. All right. So they're like, hey, man, he's corrupt. He's like one of us. That's great. We can put him in. And if the people don't realize history, he was a junior politician when he came to the scene. No one knew who he was. A lot like Barack Obama, which again was put into office in much of the same way. No one knew who he was. In fact, the guy didn't even really have a job before that. I heard a guy. He was talking about he was a manager at McDonald's, and he's like, when Obama got elected president, he was like, man, to be all honest, he's like, I could not hire him to run a McDonald's because he has no like work history other than I think he organized some political events in Chicago, but that's it. He's like he has no real job history whatsoever. He's like he doesn't have enough experience to run a McDonald's. How in the world could they elect him as president? And you know what? It's the truth. But But anyway, going back to the point, the globalists are turning the U.S. communists. They're ignoring the Constitution. They do not care about law. And here we get in this real dichotomy here because conservatives, the right, they want to follow the law. They want to follow the Constitution. But you're in a rigged game against a system that doesn't give a crap about the law. They're constantly breaking the law. But they control so much of the law that if you do something wrong against the law, they're going to come after you with full force. But if they do something against the law, oh, we're just going to, we're going to brush that under the table, like, laptops, like Anthony Weiner laptops, like, hey, how about the Biden's son's laptop, right? Hillary's laptops, all right? We're just going to make all those go away. Oh, or how about what is it, 30? What's the count now of all the people connected with the Clintons that have mysteriously come up murdered? Especially people that were going to testify against them. Really? Oh, I think the count was up to like 34 to 37. Might be 40 now. That's not a coincidence, man. How about anything that would send you to jail, they can do and get away with, like have their own servers where they're giving state secrets away and then destroy evidence, but no court finds you guilty. Or Congress asks you to appear for hearings and you say, you know what, I don't feel like coming today. Yeah, see how that works out for if Trump tried to do that, or if anyone tried to do that. It doesn't work. When the law is one-sided, we no longer have law. And we have a major problem now in our country where it's becoming brutally obvious to anyone with half a brain that our Justice Department is one-sided, taking political sides and controlled by one political side. And when you have that, you do not have the rule of law. And you have the destruction of your country and society. It's corrupt. Corruption destroys. Well, again, one of my favorite quotes I always say, in the time of Julius Caesar, you had the philosopher Cicero, the famous philosopher Cicero, and he was quoted as saying this: a republic can withstand any enemy at the gate, but it cannot survive traitors from within. Cannot survive traitors. When we have a one-sided Justice Department that's serving one interest of one political side against another, they're supposed to be impartial, but they're not. Then you have corruption, and that corruption is the erosion of government and country. And also history shows us that every republic has fallen into tyranny. And that's very quickly where we are snowballing right now. Very quickly. And that's why I'm doing this show. I'd rather not cover political stuff. I'd rather cover dogman stuff or cryptids. It's my favorite topic. Or, things along those lines. The giants, Book of Enoch, and how that stuff plays out. But unfortunately, this is one of the most important things we can discuss right now. All those things are real and playing out. But this is one of the most important things that's going on in our country. Now, before I get too far down that rabbit hole, there's a few things I want to point out in my notes, and also I can keep somewhat on track. Somewhat. All right. I talked about globalists. I'm going to swing back to some issues on that, but you get the basic idea. We got too much to cover. It's already an hour in. Need to move on to some funner, more entertaining stuff, at least for me. Hope for you too. All right. Case in point. Oops. All right. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal admits Biden showing signs of cognitive decline during closed-door meetings. Yeah. Really? Really? Wow. You're only a few years too late on making that assessment. How many times have we watched Biden give up and give a talk where he's like, starts talking about ice cream in the middle of like world affairs, or loses track of his thought, which everyone can lose track at some point, but almost every damn time you get up at the podium, come on. Oh, and by the way, he's the most podium absent president we've ever had. That's for a reason. All right. And And that's also why these debates that they're talking about, the presidential debates, are like, oh, it's not going to be to the public. It's going to be closed in house and video and all. Yeah, right. So that it can, because it couldn't survive in a public debate without going, but what did you just say? Oh, by the way, I think it's time for me to, use the bathroom. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I get what's going on. All right. But couldn't the Democrats find some other puppet that would be better to put on the strings than a guy who's like senile with dementia? I mean, come on. I mean, it's an embarrassment to our country. Now, there might be a good reason for that. There might be a good reason for that. If you are in a wolf pack and the alpha shows weakness, what happens to that alpha? The other wolves will attack and kill the alpha and take over. That's part of animal instinct. Same thing would happen in a pride of lions. Same thing happens in a lot of animal cultures, societies, whatever like that. All right. Um, there's a story about Saint Francis of Assisi one time where he went to a sultan of Persia. All right, the leader of the Persians before the Muslims, and he went into the Saint Francis actually wanted to be martyred as he he thought that would like make him a saint or something and bring him closer to God or whatever. He wanted to be like Jesus, so he wanted to be martyred. He heard that this sultan martyred all these Christians that went and tried to preach to him. So Francis thought this was his opportunity. So he went there and when he spoke to the Sultan was highly impressed with Francis, highly impressed. And Francis said some stuff. Now, Francis was not a common, ordinary person. He's a very powerful of persuasion and illuminating the mind to truth. You know what I mean? So the Sultan was quite taken with Francis, as the story goes. And the Sultan told Francis, he says, "Listen, I really like a lot of the stuff you're saying." And he's like, "And I'm tempted. I'd be really tempted to even join you." um in your quest and in what you're doing in your religion or whatever. He didn't go as far as to say your religion on, but he's like, "I'm very tempted by what you have to say." He's like, "But you have to understand something. Look around this room at all these other people in here, all these other dignitaries or all these other guards or leaders of their government, whatever." He says, "I'm a prisoner. I'm the leader, but I'm actually a prisoner here." He says, "If I was to do anything that they would think was against our culture norms, they would all turn on me and kill me." He's like, "So I'm really, even though I'm the leader, I'm a prisoner here." He's like, that's what he told Francis. All right. And then he sent Francis away with all kinds of gifts like jewels and gold and stuff like that. Francis was pissed because he hates that kind of stuff. He hated material possessions, especially like jewels and things. He really came home like upset. He thought he was going to get his martyr. But the reason I bring that up is to show that, even leadership, they get in positions where they can even become slaves to their own systems. And we have that going on a lot, in our government and stuff right now. It's part of the just a human nature with how things work. But it's something to keep in mind. Anyway, so Biden's showing signs of decline. And he's been showing signs of declines for a very long time. And the back to my original point, there might be a reason why they chose someone so inept um, and embarrassing. Because, like I said with the wolves, if you project weakness, those wolves will come attack you. So if the globalists are trying to destroy the US, which I claim is their goal, especially like not only bringing in all the migrants and floods more than we can handle, but then on top of that, it's just going to destroy our economy, among other things. But then on top of that, shutting off power, which is going to destroy our economy, shutting down supply lines, going to destroy economy. New laws you got to follow, they're going to destroy the economy. Shutdowns, which destroy economy and small business, so the bigger companies can eat those up in consolidations. Good for big business, bad for small business. But what do they care about? Big business, which is social control and fascism, and small business is independence and freedom of the American people, and that's what they don't want. So that's all by design. None of that's by accident. So if they project a weak leader for the United States, what does that do to Russia and China? It makes them want to attack us more. And that's really what the globalists want. They want the U.S. to be attacked. They're picking a fight every chance they get. And they're making us look weak so that we look ready for the attack. That's my theory. Otherwise, I can't understand why there's got to be better people on the left side that they could choose than Biden, who just is an embarrassment to our country. Okay? Now, look, whoop, I hit the wrong spot. Okay, now I'm going to play a little video for you, short clip, when I find it. If I can find the right one. And this might be it.
Look, no one should mock the elderly, least of all me, having turned gulp 60 yesterday. None of us should mock the elderly or anyone else actually struck by any mental feebleness. It's a fact of life and we should have empathy. But Joe Biden is the leader of the free world, and in a dangerous world, his mental acuity is a matter of clear and present interest to all of us. And his latest bumbling moment might be one of his worst. It relates to a Republican Congresswoman, Jackie Walorski, who was killed along with two of her staffers in this shocking head-on car crash just last month. President Biden was among those who recognised the tragedy at the time.
Flags are now flying at half-staff at the White House. President Biden expressing his condolences to her family and to Indiana's 2nd District in a statement earlier tonight.
And the president saying we may have represented different parties and disagreed on many issues, but she was respected by members of both parties for her work on the House Ways and Means Committee on which she served.
Okay, that was just last month. Very sad. But yesterday, at a White House function focusing on food and nutrition, the president was reading out acknowledgements of the officials who'd helped to organise the event.
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here.
No, Jackie wasn't there. She was killed in that accident 8 weeks ago, as President Biden had noted in a statement at the time. Joe Biden has more than 2 years to run in his presidential term, and some people pretend that he might run again. Seriously.
Now, yeah, major embarrassment, not to mention the falling asleep everywhere, walking off stage, all kinds of just things, walking the wrong directions. They have to go grab him and bring him back kind of stuff. I mean, it's bad. I mean, it's really embarrassing for our country, and it makes us look stupid. You know, this is supposed to be the leader of our country and making the decisions. When you know you don't even have the confidence, and you know that brings up something else. When the whole Mar-a-Lago situation is, they were trying to go after Trump politically, to say that he had documents he shouldn't have, which as president, he had full right and legality to have those documents. Okay. And we learned out later that, oh, they were given a shoot to kill order, that if there was any resistance, they could just eliminate everybody. Imagine that. Thank God they didn't put up a resistance. Why would that be necessary? Because they're looking for any excuse they can to eliminate this guy. All right. But Joe Biden was actually found with documents. He's guilty. That's one thing about the left. They always accuse you of what they are actually guilty of. Always accuse you of what they are actually guilty of. Do I need to say it again? They always accuse you of what they're actually guilty of. So Biden was actually guilty of having paperwork as vice president he wasn't supposed to have. Okay, but they did they did a pre-trial, and they came to the conclusion, well, he is guilty, but we're not going to put him on trial because he doesn't have the mental competency to stand trial. If he doesn't have the mental capacity to stand trial, how's he going to run for president of the country for a second term? Everyone just forget that. Then, as a complete and total lie, Biden comes on and says, see, I was up. Yeah, that sounds like my Barack Obama impersonation. Nope, it's Biden, Biden. He says, see, I was exonerated, is not guilty. That's a complete and total lie. I listened to him make that speech and it was all a lie. Maybe it's part of his dementia. Okay, we'll chalk it up to that one. All right. But a further reason why he shouldn't be running for president, which he probably won't. I don't think he's going to run for president. I think he's too far gone at this point, and the drugs they're pumping him with just aren't working as well. So further cognitive decline. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to have a bait and switch. The last minute, they're going to throw up someone else like Kamala Harris or Michael Obama. I wonder why Barack Obama on 4 separate occasions referred to his wife as Michael. Just ask Joan Rivers, because she's dead after she publicly twice said that Michelle was a tranny dude, and they all knew it. Ooh, and then she dies in like a routine procedure. Imagine that. Anyway, getting back to it. So, Biden, if he can't stand for trial because he doesn't have mental acuity, competency, whatever you want to call it, how can he run for president? Everyone just forgets that. I mean, how do we forget that?
And returning to France, where President Joe Biden marked the 80th anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, he was accompanied by his wife and First Lady Jill Biden. The president met World War II veterans and delivered a speech focusing on democracy and freedom. However, the commander-in-chief was also caught on camera making a series of gaffes during the ceremony. Our next report shares more about the historic ceremonies.
US President Joe Biden arrived in France's Normandy to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day on Thursday. However, he made headlines for all the wrong reasons. The 81-year-old made a series of unfortunate gaffes during the ceremonies, and netizens didn't miss to point out every single one of them. For starters, a clip of Biden went viral on social media that showed him bending down, seeming to be uncertain whether it was time to sit down. He was hovering in a half-squat position for several seconds. This was while he was on stage between his wife Jill Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Macron's wife Brigitte. Meanwhile, First Lady Jill Biden appeared to cover her mouth and murmur something to him. Social media users speculated that the First Lady was instructing the president to not sit down. The 13-second clip, captioned "Awkward," was first shared on X, formerly known as Twitter, by Republican National Committee Research, and it has garnered almost 5 million views so far. This very video was reshared by Donald Trump Jr., who claimed that Biden is incompetent and weak to hold the position of the President of the United States. Now, shortly after, Jill Biden appeared to escort her husband away as Macron stayed on to greet and chat with the World War II veterans. The Democrat supporters argued that he had already greeted some veterans. But several other videos showed him looking equally disoriented, like the one where he appeared to be sleeping on stage beside several other world leaders. Or in a hot mic moment where he told Macron that his advance team said he should be the first one to leave, which made the French president, well, evidently confused. These goof-ups also sparked a meme fest on social media, with users saying the president needed a full diaper change and that he was walking like a corpse. Netizens did not shy away from declaring Biden a national embarrassment for the United States. And once again, Biden's demeanor sparked a debate about concerns that he was too old to serve as president. 81-year-old Biden is the oldest person to hold the presidency and has faced skepticism from voters and Republican lawmakers about his ability to do his job. Republicans claim that the Democrat who wants to run for a second term this November appears to be slipping mentally behind closed doors. He allegedly repeats himself, refers to note cards, moves slowly, and speaks in low volume during high-stakes meetings. But the Democratic Party has defended Biden's actions. saying the president has wisdom, experience, strength, and strategic thinking to run the government on his own.
From impeachment.
So yeah, it just shows, I mean, consider that next to someone like Trump that goes in there as a strong, powerful leader that people respect, and commands respect. That's what a leader should do. That doesn't mean you're an authoritarian, but you should be able to command respect. You should be able to have weights behind your words and what you say. And that's how you're able to make deals and turn the economy back on. But here's something else. I keep going to the wrong section, hitting the wrong thing. Sorry. Did Joe Biden poop himself at D-Day event? Body language experts explains president's awkward stance. Okay. Now, that might sound funny and it might sound like you're just making fun of someone you don't care for. That's not the case here. Alex Jones reported on his show that the Secret Service has told him on multiple occasions that that not only does Biden have dementia, but at times he will just squat and start taking a dump in his pants. And he said that literally that's what was going on in that 13 seconds when he's standing up there on the stage next to the president of France. He's actually taking a dump and defecating on himself. And that's why they had to walk him off quickly, and why some were suggesting he needed diapers, and said that that happens on multiple occasions. And it's Secret Service that are the ones saying this. Okay? Again, embarrassment for our country. Now, I'm going to shift this slightly to a different direction. Pay very, very, very close attention to this next clip because it is super important.
What you know now, do you wish?
Aish. I keep doing the wrong thing. I keep going to the wrong. I got notes on the side, and I keep going to my notes instead of to the actual video clip. Okay, here we go.
What you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. Wow. I'd be fine with it.
Do you really think that Biden is running the office of the president of our country? Do you think he's got the mental capacity to actually do so? Or would it be another stronger person behind him?
What you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. Wow. I'd be fine with it.
That says everything you need to know about our government and who's in control right now. And to further that, I'll show you this. Now, keep in mind, this video is after Biden is the president of the United States. that's not eye-opening, I don't know what is. That's one of the saddest things I've ever seen in my life. You know all these commercials where they show like all these little puppies malformed or mistreated, and they're asking for money, or even when they do that with the little kids that have suffering from different uh, cancers or horrible things, and they're asking for your money. Um, that's like this. I mean, this is just heartbreakingly sad. This is a video of the president of our country, and not a single person in the room wants to talk to him. At one point, he's just aimlessly walking around and goes and looks at the curtains. He's got nothing better to do. Not a single person in there is want to talk to him. Then he's standing next to Barack Obama. Every single person in the room is lining up to greet and shake the hand of the former president. Not the president, Biden, but the former president. Why? Why? Not one person in that video is paying any attention to Joe Biden, let alone Barack Obama. At one point, Biden starts tugging on his arm and then grabs his shoulder, trying to get his attention. He knows, he can feel it. He sees him right, he knows he's right there. But he doesn't care. He's ignoring that guy because that man doesn't matter. There's not a single person in that room that believes that that man matters or is running the country. Not one. Yet everybody is getting in line to greet Obama. That explains everything you need to know about our government and who's in charge right now. Kamala Harris, standing right there next to Obama. She's not next to Biden. She also is ignoring Biden. But she's trying to greet everyone that's coming up to greet, not even her, but Obama first. Who has the power? Who has the power?
What you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. Wow. I'd be fine with it.
So again, that says everything you need to know. Biden's not in power. Biden represents the third term of Barack Obama and the Communist Socialist Democratic Party that doesn't care about the Constitution. They care about communism, globalism, and the destruction of our country. Now, I'm not claiming that the Republicans are that much better. They're the biggest setup bitches on the planet because the Democrats always control everything and the Republicans hardly ever do anything. It's not to say they don't. I mean, there's still some good Republicans, but most of them are just as corrupted or controlled by the opposition. And they're worthless. Worthless. When Donald Trump first won the nomination for the Republican Party, the leaders of the Republican Party said that they were not going to support him and that they were personally going to vote for Hillary. That shows you that they're all piles of shit and not worth the shoes that they're standing in. What party do they represent? You think they're representing you? No. You think they're representing their own personal interest? Yes. All right. Sadly, our country is not following the Constitution. Here, I'll give you a prime example. You ever heard of a thing called the Patriot Act? You know how that reads? Yeah, I read the Patriot Act. You know how it reads? This takes away your constitutional right. 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 This takes away. It's the whole Patriot Act. So if they can now give themselves more unelected power by just having a go around from the Constitution or removing your rights at any point in time for any subjective reason that they want and desire, then do you have a functioning Constitution anymore? No, you do not. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. You do not. Just ask some of the people who are still in prison since January 6th for doing nothing wrong, or if they did, you're talking like, super minor misdemeanor infractions, and yet are still in prison after 3 years without so much as a hearing or a court date. Ask them if they have constitutional rights. No. You think that these people care about election rules or election standards? And do you think that the Supreme Court is honorable and just and is going to save us? When there was tons of evidence coming out about the election abuse, election fraud of the last campaign, and you'd say what you want about, the pillow guy, Mike Lindell, man's a hero. All right. Lost almost everything. Man's a hero. He did for a forensic auditing conference all on his own dime when he was able to absolutely prove beyond a shadow of a doubt from multiple angles and directions that there was tampering with the voting machines and with the numbers and everything. Absolute forensic proof from professional forensic investigators that he hired out of his own pocket to do because our government wouldn't do it. And what did the Supreme Court have to say when asked to intervene? They didn't say there's no, I'll tell you what the left says. The left says, oh, there's no such thing as false election because the Supreme Court found that there was none. That's an absolute lie. Just like Joe Biden getting up and saying, oh, I was exonerated in court. You were not exonerated. You were found guilty. But you were found you're not competent enough to stay in trial. So they gave you a pass that they wouldn't give to any Republican on planet Earth. But because you're on that side of the corrupt law and the judicial system, you can get away with it. Just like your son. Oh, which now we're going to hold your son to the grinder just so we can say we're not being impartial. If you weren't being impartial, you'd be going after Hillary and Biden and all the rest of those corrupt people, including those in the Justice Department and people like Comey that admitted to lying before Congress, yet nothing happens to them. When you send people to prison like General Flynn and who else? What was the other one? Roger Stone. Roger Stone. I'm gonna write that down. Yeah, you send them to prison over contempt, and that was even over like things that you just make up crap. The other was Comey gave an outright admission that he lied and that he leaked information that he shouldn't have leaked for his position, and yet he gets a free pass. But ask General Flynn if he got a free pass or went to prison. Ask Roger Stone if he got a free pass or went to prison. Ask Stephen Bannon, just sentenced this week to prison for contempt of Congress. All right, where they're just making crap up. So one side, again, can commit any crime and get away with it. The other side, no, you're going to be held to the fire. Now, here's the problem. This is an older article. Chinese official, we are driving America to its death. And that is the truth. By the way, Do you know that the day, or like, I think it was like the first week that Biden was elected president, China ran a story that made national news where they said, we now control the politicians that control America. Do you know that some of the biggest contributors to the Clinton campaign, and the if not the biggest contributor, one of the biggest to the Clinton campaign was China. And then as soon as Bill Clinton gets elected, oh, we accidentally lost our long-range missile technology to China. Yeah? Or was it sold? Was it sold? Which is the reason why you had to have private servers that later came along in the first place, to sell state secrets, pay to play. All right. So Biden gets elected, and the president of China is saying, hey, we control the politicians. We got them in our back pocket. Not to mention, you know, on those Hunter Biden laptop, he actually has notes and emails on there where he's saying that he's being paid off by China to do for spy stuff. All right. I mean, hello, you know, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Okay. Russia warships arrived in Cuba on Wednesday. All right. I got a bunch of people that were hitting me up saying, John, do you know about this? You know, of course I knew about it. And it's nothing new. We've had a lot of this stuff going on in subs around our country that from Russia for a while now. This is just more of a public thing. But the sad thing is, it is an escalation. Just like Germany said that they're going to go send troops for the Ukraine. France said they're going to send troops to the Ukraine. Poland, now that they got their new liberal politician in office, he's bringing in the transgendered movement and sending troops to Ukraine. So everything's gearing up on the war front. Then you've got the UN and the U.S. threatening to invade inside. We've been attacking targets in Russia with American weapons. So it's all escalating. So Russia sending troops, sending subs, sending warships. This is all an escalation. Putin warned of nuclear war. All right, because things are escalating. All right. Now, breaking, Marine Corps Colonel warns this is an active coup against America. So a former Marine colonel who's retired in Mississippi now gave an interview this week where he was talking about how the left in our government is taking a coup, a communist globalist coup, to take over our country, to destroy it. All right, destroy America, destroy freedom, liberty. Along those lines, also, a globalist coup against America happening now. Special operations Army colonel warns. So another special operations colonel is warning that we're facing a coup. By the way, in the news today, they said the Navy SEALs accepted wokeism. Well, congratulations for them. We can now, start making them wear pink when they go into battle, right? So we all know about Alex Jones. First of all, his lawsuit case, and then now they're trying to remove his show. There's some important information to bring up here. Say what you want about Alex Jones. I know he's been completely demonized in the media. I can tell you with my background, he's been one of the better sources of information that I've found in the last 20 plus years over any organizations. And I've never found an organization that has done more in news media to take on the globalists and try to point out the problems more than Alex Jones. Now, the whole reason they went after him with the lawsuit, by the way, the entire lawsuit, they went after him. People are like, oh, he's guilty now. He's guilty. He's not guilty of jack. He's guilty of being a victim of the left, unjustly using the weaponized judicial system now that they've been able to control. And by the way, furthermore on that point, I don't think it should be legal for people like George Soros to fund our DAs, judges, and attorneys in our country, and prosecutors. that should be illegal. All right. But anyway, that said, we shouldn't be allowing outside influence just to use money to control our judicial system, all right, which is becoming more and more left control and leaning in many ways and in many districts. And that's what you see going on. And now a new thing is happening that really has never happened in this scale in the United States before, is that they've weaponized parts of the judicial system and more liberal areas with more liberal judges and with more liberal citizens as far as jurors. Okay. This is a travesty of justice. This is not justice. This is not justice. What happened with the Alex Jones trial was a farce. All right. He was not allowed to defend himself. He was declared guilty without a trial prior to the trial to the jury. All right. The accusations they made against him are unfounded and not true. I know because I listened live during all the episodes he gave during the Sandy Hook situation. So I know what he said. I know what he did. And what they're claiming he said does not meet reality. All right. They violated all of his rights in the court system, even to be able to say he's not guilty or something was a lie said against him, like that he peed on graves of deceased from that incident. That's complete lies. No one can show evidence or proof of any kind. That even an FBI agent said, "Oh, I was injured in accusations too," who he never heard of before. Or parents saying he ruined their lives when he never even named them. He named one down the road that was brought up and stuff. And he never denied that it didn't take place. He said it's a possibility, from what I remember, if I remember correctly, he said it's a possibility. You always have to take into consideration that there could be false flag government events that took place in something like Sandy Hook. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It's called your First Amendment right to believe what you believe. And as a news organization, to try to convince people that. All right, that's the whole purpose of having news and independent media. And so that information and media is not one-sided. That's called what's a good name for that? That's just called propaganda. All right. You don't want the state being in charge of news. That's propaganda. And by the way, all the mainstream news agencies, they're just state-owned propaganda agencies now. There's no real journalism there. They're reading from a script. They're actors. They're just doing what they're told to say, what the editors tell them. And if they don't, boom, you're booted off the show. Ask Tucker Carlson. See what I'm saying? That's not news. That's propaganda. In fact, do you know that the government rescinded a law in the last couple of years there was a law that we had in the U.S. that made actual propaganda illegal. And you know what? That's a pretty good law. But our government undid that law and took it away, so that now it's okay for them to lie to you on a daily basis and feed you a big pile of shit called propaganda. Welcome to America. Have some. You can't make this crap up. You can't make this crap up. It's all corruption. It's all control. Anyway, and then if it wasn't enough that they took away, they abused all of Alex Jones's rights in that trial. Then they're like, "Oh, you owe us $1 billion in a settlement. You owe us more money than has ever been given before. Why not make it like 10 kabillion kabuka dollars?" Really? And then they admitted, they actually admitted that after the trial, that they didn't care about money. They wanted him and his show removed from the air. That's what it was all about. It should be a complete mistrial just for that admission alone. And if there's any justice, there will be a repeal system, and all that will be overturned as ludicrous, and against a complete violation of rights and unfounded. All right. Here's the problem with that. The problem is it'll take at least 2 years to get there. And second of all, it'll take millions and millions out of his own pocket also to get there. You see what I'm saying? This is what I'm talking about, of a weaponized judicial system. All right. Where they could put Owen Schroyer in jail for doing nothing. Doing nothing. All right. Now, there's a bigger picture, though, than the Alex Jones trial. They were trying to set a new case precedence that they could do this in other cases. They then took the same strategy to January 6 cases that they won, and then they took the same strategy to the Trump case, where they just said that Trump was accused of no less than 34 felonies. 34 felonies. I've listened to lawyer after lawyer after lawyer who said, this is complete BS. This is all made up, fabricated crap. And even if it was real, none of this warrants even a single felony. If you study case precedents in history, which is what you're supposed to do in case law, instead of inventing new stuff. But that's what I'm saying. They even changed the laws so that they could fit more accusations in there. I mean, it's completely a travesty of justice, right? But let's look further. Okay. Analyst admits it's important that huge mega voice Steve Bannon should be silenced ahead of election. Why do you want to take one of Trump's campaign strategists, all right, and biggest spokesman and advisors, and you want to make it important to remove him prior to the election? You think that's a coincidence? Why is this man such a threat? He's got to be removed before the election. Oh, hey, look at someone else's show that's being removed before the election. Right? Judge orders former Trump advisor Steve Bannon to report to prison on July 1st for contempt of Congress. Oh, Comey gets the pass for actually breaking the law. And yet, this man is held for contempt of court because he wouldn't lie and roll over against his friend. That's a real man and a real friend. And he didn't break the law. Ron Paul, one of the good actual congressmen that we have. The Trump trial and our injustice system, all right? And that's what it is. It's complete injustice. Trump is not guilty of any of these crimes, and they are misdemeanors at best. You're talking about possibly had an affair on his wife with somebody. What politician in Congress hasn't? You know? I mean, holy cow. That's what you're going to like. You got to find the smallest little thing. And even then, that's not illegal. It's only illegal with his wife. And they worked that out. If it was true. Which, by the way, you really think Stormy Daniels is a credible witness? Oh, and not only that, she completely contradicted herself. You know, in law enforcement, we call that a lie. All right? As uncredible. So she said before that nothing ever happened between them, made public statements of that. So now she's recanting that all these years later for, you know, the dinero, which I'm sure she's getting paid over the table and under the table for. Whatever. Yeah. Just working that poll. A shocking number of candidates were assassinated ahead of Mexico's election. That's huge. That's gigantic. So we just here's something else. Let me back that up a second here. All right. So we already talked about election interference in our country. And by the way, I showed pictures of the Dominion voting machines. And you know what? They all have boxes that say made in China. Why are you going to let your enemy, all right? And China is our enemy, officially. Why are you going to let your enemy create your voting machines for your country? You think there could be any abuse in that? Let me show you this. Oh, look at this. This is a news clip from, it was like 5-6 years ago on October. China used a tiny chip in a hack that infiltrates U.S. companies. Okay, let me expand on this story. It was found, see, our phones and computers are made in China. Why? Because America, global elites, switched the manufacturing base of our country that made us so strong and just gave it to China for free. And just as Trump pointed out in his term of office, why is it that we have one-sided trade deals where they get 100% and we get zero in return? Makes no sense whatsoever unless you're a globalist and you want to destroy America and you're propping up China, which, by the way, it wasn't a long time ago, China didn't have a pot to piss in. All their people had to go to work on little bicycles for their whole country. And now they're one of the most biggest superpowers and most advanced cities in the world. How is that? Because the globalists manipulated the U.S. to destroy it by giving our manufacturing all over to China in one-sided trade deals where they get everything and we get zero. Trump was like, man, with the car industry, I'm just asking for like, 20%, 20% back, just this much instead of zero. And China went crazy over that because they're like, no, man, we like the big pie we're getting where we get it all and you get squat and we're getting rich and your country's being bankrupt. All right. Not even to mention, we're just going to give billions to this country, billions to that country. Oh, a kabillion to this country and a quadruple billion, whatever that means, to this country. And we're going to do it over and over. For what? For what? For what? Why we're in a crisis and can't even pay our own debts for this country. It wasn't that long ago. I was in New York and they had the national debt on the top of a building and it was at $9 trillion. Was it 9 trillion? 9 billion. It was something we could have easily paid off in one generation. Now, it's so big, it's impossible to pay off. And you know what that means? That means it's going to sink like the Titanic. All right? I got friends that think that they're, big, super professional economists. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out. You don't pay your debts, you're going to sink eventually. And they know that that's the case. Why do you think they're printing more money like there's no repercussions and it's going out of style? Then they're using that money to buy real assets. What? So they're trying to make whatever money they can. Oh, and you don't think they're not getting kickbacks from all the kabillions they're giving away to these other countries, to Israel and to the Ukraine? They're all getting kickbacks on that. All of them are getting kickbacks on that. Why do you think they passed a rule in Congress? We're not going to audit the money or see where it's going. Why do you think that little midget? And I don't mean to defame people of short dwarf status that suffer from that. But why do you think that little Ewok that they call the president of the Ukraine? Why do you think he's buying casinos on small islands and $70 million yachts? All right, and buying like large houses in Florida and estates with the money we're giving him for the Ukraine. Oh, there's no corruption there. Oh, no. Not to mention, there was somebody that leaked, I showed this before in a previous show I did, credentials where we've already given him American citizenship. So when things go bad, they just bring him here to his big estates after he's been our little puppet over there, just like Biden is our little puppet here. Then he has a safety net to come back to here. And he's got his $1 million homes and his $1 million yachts and even the casinos he owns. Boy, he's set up all with the money we're donating from our pocket. All right. No corruption there, right? Speaking of, how is it legal for Congress to do insider trading, but you go to prison for that? Ask Margaret Stewart. All right. Not Margaret Thatcher. That's too old. Anyway, so that was my playing at a bad joke. Getting back. So what happened is we caught China, who manufactures all of our phones and computers, placing chips that were so small, it's like the very tip head of a pencil in these devices so that they could create back doors to spy on us and our system. And people are worried about TikTok. TikTok's not the problem. We're already compromised. And you think that all the other apps you're using on your phone aren't compromising all your information? Yes, they are. You're not safe if you're on the phone. You're using a smartphone, all your stuff's compromised. It's not safe. So just know that. TikTok's not the problem. Just ask was it MGT or whatever, what's her name? This, um it's MTG. You ask her, she said she fought against the TikTok act and said that she's going to go join TikTok because it's not the problem. The reason our government demonizes TikTok is because they don't control it. Now they have their own censorship on there, but our government doesn't control it, and it controls most of the other platforms except for the X-Men with Elon Musk. And say what you want about Elon. There's things he does I like and I don't like, but he's defending freedom, and he said that he bought X because he's trying to save the planet. And the way of saving the planet is offering people to have multiple opinions and sides, free speech. He's being more American than America because he's saying we shouldn't censor free speech, that everybody needs to have a say, even if it's dissenting, even if you don't agree with them, they need to have a say. And he's supported people, even monetarily, to live that are dissenters on his programs just so that they can have a platform and a contrary thing to say. So it's not all one-sided like Fox News is. Fair and balanced. Fox News, 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 fair and balanced. That's called Psychology 101. That's called neuro-linguistic programming. All right. They are manipulating you with psychology to believe their gobbledygook as real when it's propaganda and it's lies so that they can manipulate you. No one should be listening to Fox News, especially since Tucker Carlson's gone. What's the point? Just go find where Tucker Carlson's at. Listen to him there. By the way, he announced he's getting ready to go on a national tour with Alex Jones and Russell Brand, who's another amazing person and great speaker. All right. And they're going to tear it up. So removing them online, fine. They're going to do public talks, and I hope that people go listen to what they have to say. We do not want our news to be one-sided in this country. We need dissenting opinions. We don't always need people that agree with us. But getting back to the point, our stuff is compromised. All right. If they do that, do you think they're not going to do that to our voting machines that they make in China? Yes. Can you trust them? No. Now, here's something else. Nancy Pelosi, her husband was on the board of Dominion. Do you think that's a little bit of a conflict of interest? Yes. That's a problem. That's a major problem. Oh, I found her. There was a crazy sighting of Nancy Pelosi this week. I just wanted to throw that up here. Yep, there she is. And there's one of Hillary too. Oh, yep, yeah. Oh, look, she's got too much to say. We need to get rid of that. Anyway, so getting back to where we were. So, the campaign. So back to assassination ahead of Mexico. Again, the theme is modern warfare. Well, here's modern warfare. Not only was our own elections tampered with, okay, but it wasn't just our country. The globalists are doing this around the world. After our election, there was the election in Brazil with Bolsonaro. All right. Bolsonaro was conservative. He was a nationalist like Trump. And what happened is the globalists were able, globalists / communists, all right, were able to use spy tactics, probably with big help from us and ours, all right, our intelligence agencies I'm referring to, which are all globalist communist controlled. They're evil. Just ask JF Kennedy, because he said he was going to destroy them because they didn't serve the interests or protection of the U.S. And he said that he was going to disband them and destroy them. And he actually drew up paperwork to do just that. It was not an idle threat. And he fired the head of that agency, which wound up being one of the investigators on the Warren Commission. No coincidence there, huh? Oh, and by the way, those files are still secret. the government feels like you can't know the truth. We're just going to cover that up until we're good and ready, which means never. Yeah, no corruption there, right? Nothing to see. Just drive on. Anyway, it's just the death of our president of the United States. I mean, hello. Hopefully we don't see that happen again soon. And I'm talking about with Trump. Anyway, so JF Kennedy said he was going to destroy that organization. Well, they killed him. You got to think, they're professionals at staging coups from the inside. That's what they do. They've done it to multiple countries for years. Now they did the same thing here. And if you don't believe me, I've got a very important quote I was going to show later, but I think since I brought it up, I'll show it right now if I can find it. So just give me a second here because I got a lot to look through. Brand. And you know what? I'm not even seeing the quote that I tried at. Maybe I didn't add it. Did I not add the quote? The quote I'm looking for is a quote from Stalin. Y'all remember Stalin? And I'm not seeing it anywhere. Doggone it. It takes me like a couple of hours, usually about 4 hours, to prepare for a show before I even start the show. It takes up a lot of time. And I'm really not seeing that quote anywhere. Anyway, the quote from Stalin says this. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. Oh yeah, look, it's next to go. You know what? I'm just going to swing that little joker over to my computer real quick. There is some good about advanced technology, even though there's a whole lot bad. Bada bing, bada bang. Now we add it. Take me just a minute. See, this is where it's nice having a co-host because I can tell them to jibber jabber while I hurry up and do something I forgot to do or need to add that's related to the topic. So I got to do my own jibber jab. Here we go. Joseph Stalin, famous quote: "The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything." Let that sink in. The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. So now when you see all these abuses of Dominion voting machines, you see all these mail-in ballots, you see all these illegal voting, you see that more people voted than there are people in a state, including dead people or people that moved, or mail-in ballots. Oh, we're going to stop how is it that election night has turned into like election month, election week, or election month? How's that possible? How is it, we're going to stop the election because one side's winning and we don't like that. So we're just going to stop the polling. Oh, we're even going to make up that we had a pipe break in here and therefore we got to stop, which later came out to be a complete and total lie. Lie. All right? And yet there's no election interference. But suddenly trucks are pulling up with bags of ballots that aren't even signed, all right? Not even folded properly like they were mailed or sent in or anything. And yet all of a sudden you got just enough numbers to win. And not only that, it's the most popular president in all of history. Holy cow. Holy cow, it's the most popular president in all of history. Biden. Really? He beat out Barack Obama. How's that even possible? In a popularity contest. Right. That's complete crap. All while Trump actually had a 34% increase in the Latino community of voters, a 34% increase in the Black community of voters. He even had a 30% increase in the gay community. And yet, with his previous numbers and all those gains, could loss? No, not without extreme corruption. All right. And the problem is that's what we're facing. But like I said, going back to these other countries. All right. So in Brazil, Bolsonaro, the communists were able to take over. He had to run for his life and fled to the US for protection because they were threatening to kill him and his family after they stole the election. You had another election. Oh, you had an election in Argentina. Now, the opposite thing happened. The conservative won the election. How is that possible, do you say? Because Argentina said, we're throwing out the voting machines and we're going to start using paper ballots. And guess what? All of a sudden, the conservative won because they stopped using the voting machines. Imagine that. Imagine if we did that here in the US. You would actually have real elections again, you know? But no, that's not going to happen. Georgia changed their whole electoral process the night before the election or of the election. Just I wonder why they did that in voting districts and all the kind of craziness going on there in Georgia. And that's going back to the Supreme Court I mentioned earlier. The Supreme Court did not rule that there was no election interference. The Supreme Court said, we're not even going to entertain the case. We're not even going to look at it. We're not going to look at any evidence. We're just going to ignore to do our job completely. That's what they did. And yet the left says, oh, we won. They didn't find any election interference. We won. It's unfounded. You're wrong if you say that. Wrong. I was a police officer. You can't investigate a case that you refuse to even investigate. You can't say that evidence is false when you refuse to even look at it or investigate it. I mean, holy cow. It's like you're in a room full of kindergartners and they're the ones in control. I mean, that doesn't work. So Brazil, Argentina, look at Poland. Well, funny thing happened. The globalist Communist Party won in Poland. All right. And as soon as they won in Poland, they started opening the doors to illegals, to the whole transgender movement. Funny how those two things always go together. And sending troops to the Ukraine, weapons and troops to Ukraine. Imagine that. Imagine that. All right. You don't think that there was election interference? The whole key is election interference. How do you think Francis got in office? The man who's completely anti-Catholic, running the Catholic Church. He's a globalist. Everything he does is communist and globalist. He supports the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Clintons, Biden. He supports all the people on that side. He doesn't support anybody on the other side, including Cardinal Burke, Cardinal Sarah, Cardinal Zen. Holy people that are faithful to their religion in the Catholic Church. No, he's on the opposite side. He said he's a communist socialist, and he said Jesus was too. That's a blasphemy. Blasphemy. That man's about as much of a pope as my left finger is, or middle finger. Anyway, I digress. Election interference is going on everywhere across the country by the globalists right now. The globalists control France. The globalists control, which is communist. They control the EU, which is communist. They control Italy, which is socialist, the other side of the same coin. They control India, which is really socialist. They control Africa. They control South America. All right. They control the Philippines. Most of these countries are communist or socialist. The whole EU is communist socialist. The most of the world is communist socialist. You know what's funny? Remember how earlier I said they always accuse you of what they actually are? You listen to Fox News and CNN, they keep talking about Putin like he's the biggest communist ever. Russia's not communist anymore. America is. And I say that as a damn patriot that loves my country and served for my country. Russia has sworn off communism and socialism, and they've re-embraced religion, Christianity, and capitalism. And you know how powerful capitalism is when it's done right, and not these globalists that abuse it and then say, see, it's wrong and messed up and it doesn't work and it's bad and we should destroy it. No, it works when you're not cheating the system. It's not perfect. Nothing is. But it's a whole lot better than communism or socialism, or what they want to replace it with, which is just absolute authoritarianism and tyranny. Russia, Putin has stated from his own mouth, if you listen to him, Russia has learned from the errors of communism and socialism, and they've sworn it off for their country. They've re-embraced Christianity. Putin said there is no Russia without God. There is no Russia without God. That used to be America. He says that they have adopted capitalism in their country. And capitalism is so strong, so powerful, and always goes with Christianity. Just like communism, fascism, and all the isms always go together, and the loss of your freedom. And freedom always goes with Christianity. That's why we have a country built on freedom, because we were a Christian country. But capitalism is so powerful that Russia went from being completely bankrupt and devastated, to re-emerging as a world power in a very, very short amount of time, all because capitalism works. Capitalism works. Communism and socialism, they don't even work as functioning societies. They work for one thing and one thing only. They work to divide and destroy countries from within. The French Revolution was communism. The Bolshevik Revolution that took over the coup in Russia was communism. And now we're having the same communist takeover, not only in the EU and the West and Europe and in South America and in large parts around the world like Germany and France, but we're having communism take over right here in the United States. And that breaks my heart. I served in the military. I come from a family that served the military. I served because I felt it was my duty to serve. Because I loved my country and I loved my people and I loved its values and what it stood for. But you know what it stood for? It stood for God. It stood for Christianity. It stood for family. It stood for values and particularly freedom. But everything the government's given us today is anti-God, anti-Christianity, anti-family, anti-freedom, and anti-values. And that is the destruction of our country. This is not America anymore. And how can we expect for anything except for our demise from the world and from God? We've turned our back on God. So we're seeing elections being taken over, not just in the US, but in Brazil, attempted in Argentina until they got away with the machines. It didn't work there. But don't you believe me? They tried. Poland, they took the elections there. All right. And now, most recently, Mexico. Mexico. All right. I have a friend of mine that I'm honored to be friends with, and he was actually running for president of Mexico in this election. He would send me ballots from Mexico where he was like running like number one in some of the polls because he's a celebrity. He made the movie Sound of Freedom, all right? And he's a great person. He's one of the best people I've ever met in my life, and I feel extremely honored to know him and to have spent time with him. And I'm grateful to God for that. And he's a man of real integrity. He has more integrity than any other person I've ever met in my life. He's a holy person. And he's a person that's had all the things thrown at him you can imagine, money, power, and he's turned it all down because he wants to do the right thing. And he made the movie Sound of Freedom, which took them years to be able to get to the theaters. For a long time, they didn't know if they ever would because the globalist system tried to get rid of it and make it go away. They didn't want it coming out. The movie finally made it to the theaters and it did phenomenal. Well, he has been planning to run for president for a long time before that movie came out. And like I said, was doing well in polls because he's very popular, all right, as a celebrity. I asked him before the election what was going on because I didn't hear anything about him in the news and stuff. And he wrote me back and he says, they blocked me from being on the ballot. They blocked me from being on the ballot to run. Does that sound familiar? Who are they trying to keep off the ballot in the United States right now? It's the same groups doing the same things. It's the globalists. And they work with the other countries. They're in this for the long haul and the big game, not just one country. All right? Even though some countries are more of an influence and power than others, so they target that more, like the US. But what I'm saying is there's a trend of them stealing elections around the world to manipulate world leaders and governments. And they didn't even allow my friend on the ballot because it's corruption. It's corrupt. And they put this woman as the new president of Mexico. And people are like, oh, it's so great. We have a woman. Oh, yeah, we have a woman. Isn't it so awesome? We have a woman. No. It shouldn't matter if you're a woman. It shouldn't matter who's the most qualified for the job. And ideally, it's not going to be someone who's in the back pocket of the globalists, which she is. Imagine that. They put a puppet on the string. Ooh, never saw that before. Where have we seen puppets on strings? Starting to see it all the time, including in the Vatican. That's another election that was stolen by the globalists to put a globalist in power. You know, speaking of, that reminds me of something else I want to show. If I can quickly find it. Give me a second here. Pretend there's like elevator music playing or something. Do 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 do. Here we go. See if I can swing this one over quickly. It's moving. Moving. Got it. This falls right in line with the abuse of what I'm talking about. And a lot of people are not piecing these things together. And yet these pieces of the puzzle are what are actually shaping our world today. So it's extremely important that people have awareness of this type of information and can put these pieces together. So it's coming up. There it is. Check out this article by Gloria TV. WikiLeaks. You want to know why Julian Assange is in prison? It's because, unjustly so, the man's a hero, just like Snowden was and is, for trying to do the right thing by whistleblowing against corruption. That should always be the right thing to do. That's how we keep our country safe and our liberty free. All right, is talking about corruption from secret places. These men are godsends and heroes, and they sacrifice everything for us. And people are unappreciative of the liberties they have for the ones that have paid the price for that. What happened here? Julian Assange leaked from WikiLeaks this article of an email between Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and George Soros. George Soros, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton orchestrated a coup in the Vatican to overthrow the the conservative Pope Benedict and replace him with the radical leftist globalist Pope Francis, according to a group of Catholic leaders citing evidence from various sources, including WikiLeaks emails. All right. I read the emails, and in those emails, Hillary said, I hate the Catholics because they're the biggest ones that fight against her, usually because of abortion. All right. And no Christian should be voting for any leader that supports abortion. That means you cannot be Christian and vote Democratic. It doesn't work that way, because you're voting not only for abortion, you're also voting against life, against the family, and you're voting for communism, and that's anti-Christian and hate and it hates Christianity, no matter what it claims. So, in fact, I always say this point: um, Christianity and communism cannot coexist. One will destroy the other. Now, the United States was founded on Christianity and was very anti-communist. Now our country is anti-Christian and becoming more and more communist by more and more tyrannical government that only seeks more power and control, while we have less and less freedom. Like I said, the Constitution no longer is really effective anymore in many ways. So I read the email from this, and she said she hates Catholics because of them voting against her, on especially I think she was referring to abortion, and she said they took credit for creating the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was when there was a coup in Egypt and the government was replaced. Sound familiar? Have I just not been talking about how they're rigging elections and that they're masters of doing so? All right. Well, there you go. So she took credit for that. And she said, we need to use the same tactics on the Vatican to remove the Pope, which was Benedict, and replace him with someone who's not faithful to the Catholic Church, but is faithful to our globalist agenda. And that's exactly what happened with this. I'm trying to find a polite way to say it, but I can't find one. To replace it with this demon, all right, that calls himself a pope, and he's not. If the previous pope was removed by force in any way or manipulation, and there was manipulation in the voting of the curia to replace him, then it doesn't matter what any theologian says on planet Earth, he's invalid. And I absolutely claim, with proof from this, also from the things he said and done, and from other groups like the Sangala Mafia, if you have any clue what that is, that took credit for manipulating his election, that the man does not have grace of office and is not a pope, and other than the name only. And he proves that every day by attacking the traditions and teachings of the church and promoting globalism and communism instead, which is completely contrary. In fact, there's been no less than 5 previous popes in the Catholic Church that have declared you cannot be even a moderate socialist and communist and even call yourself a Christian, let alone a pope. So I try to tell Catholics there's more to being faithful to the chair of Peter than one man. One man does not have the power to undo what they all taught and stood for. Being faithful to the chair of Peter means being faithful to all the Peters, all the popes, and what they collectively taught and stood for, which was communism, bad, socialism, bad, globalism, bad. Okay? You can't be that in Pope. So, anyway, okay. So you see that elections are being tampered with around the world. All right. That was the point. Oh, and back to the story again. That was all the lead up to the story. So back to the story. Shocking number of candidates were assassinated ahead of the Mexican election. See, we go to such extreme in controlling and rigging elections that they created a whole bunch of assassinations. I heard somebody, I don't know the exact number. I heard someone say there was like 30 assassinations. It was a bunch. It wasn't a few. Of all people in running for political things that would have been key people. and they were all just wiped out. Wiped out because let me put it this way. Say you're going to play a board game with somebody and say, you know what, there's a lot of money on the line, but you're cheating. Okay. There's no way to win the game if someone's cheating. That's why cheating is bad. Say you're playing poker. Hey, you're playing for the World Poker Tour. You're at the final table. It's just between you and one other person. And they cheat and they win the money, they win the ring, the watch, the title. They win everything. And you found out they cheated. Well, isn't it a dishonor that you found out that they cheated? Like the Lance Armstrong I mean, he was don't get me wrong, a brilliant racer. But they found out he was juicing and cheating. And that's unfair to everybody else. And he probably would have won it without all that crap. But, you know, we get older, people get more desperate. Just look at the plastic surgery community in the Los Angeles area with all the stars. They come out looking more and more of plastic, you know, on a crazy basis, and that does not age well. But anyway, you can't win against people that are cheating. So we're expecting our elections. Oh, I hope there's going to be a different outcome. I hope that the election's going to be different this time. How? If you change nothing to stop the cheating, how do you expect to have any chance of winning? If there's not election laws to ensure that it's done properly and without cheating, then how can you expect any different outcome than what happened the last several times? They believe there's one shot for Trump, and that's that he's so popular with such a landslide that he can beat the cheating. Well, you know what? That happened his first term of office. They cheated then too. But it was such a landslide, he beat the system. But they made damn sure that wouldn't happen the second time. And what do you think they're doing now? Look, we're at the point now that they might cause, and here's what we're really coming to. This is part of modern warfare. They might cause catastrophes so big that we have to suspend our election process. Or, if even not that bad, that we have to all be on lockdown and we have to do all the voting from home or online, you know, or all electronic. That can't be cheated. You see what I'm saying? Really? And that's one of the big threats we're coming to. When even Fox News and CNN are admitting right now that Trump's way ahead in all the polls. I mean, think about it. It doesn't take a brainiac to figure this out. One person's destroying our country, looks like a complete idiotic fool, and it's embarrassing our country. He's making inflation go up. Our gas prices are going up. Our food prices are going up. Everything's going up. We've got less money, and they want more taxes and more interest rates. Then you got the other side who's saying, hey, I'm going to do everything I can to fix that, mitigate it, do less taxes, and turn the economy back on again and save our country. Really? Well, gee, should we go on the side of communism and death? Or should we go with the one person who's saying that we'll try and actually stop that? You know? So, messing with elections. The newest socialist scheme, you should worry, is hidden in plain sight. We are witnessing a raging socialist movement in America today. That sounds familiar. I thought I said that. The government's closing our businesses and churches and forcing us to stay home more and more. That's called, yeah, that was all by design, and it's coming again. Politicians who promise to pay your rent. Oh, yeah, that's the new thing. Oh, sit home, be lazy, do nothing. We'll just give you money. Yeah, I'm sure that'll go to a good place for our country and not put us all in slavery and poverty. Politicians who promise to pay your rent and send you a check are soaring in popularity. In fact, in recent Gallup polls says more Democrats now have a positive view of socialism more so than capitalism. What was I just telling you? Yeah, well, it's easy to do that when you control the media and you control entertainment, and you control universities. All right. And you can control the banks too. All right. And you push all those things to saying, hey, you either get in line with our new socialist system, or we're going to censor you, because we control what people have to say. And censoring is one of the most evil things on the planet. And they always say that they censor you to protect you. Oh, we got to protect you, but we got to protect your rights by taking your rights away. No. The highest form of liberty is dissent, meaning you have a voice, and you're not punished for that voice. You're not silenced or censored for that voice. That's what freedom is. That's what American is. That's what ideal is. Ideals of our country. Idealism, whatever. You get the idea. It's been a long night. Maxine Waters, she wants to warn us of a civil war and manga domestic terrorists. Since when have manga been terrorists? Just like they said on January 6th, oh, this is the worst attack on our country since Pearl Harbor. Really? Without even one shot fired. Oh, wait, there was a shot fired. It was from the left killing an innocent protester. Imagine that. It was former military, served our country, a veteran, and that's how they get paid in return, right? For trying to stand up for freedom and liberty. Wow, you got the whole BLM thing on the other side, destroying entire cities, going on for an entire summer. And yet that's not terrorism? Especially when George Soros is paying leaders to be there and organize people to be there and bussing them in and leaving piles of bricks for them to even pick up and throw at buildings and glass and stuff like this. I mean, holy cow. Again, one-sided. You do not have society when things in the law is one-sided. They're all given a pass. They're arrested for crimes, and they got high-powered attorneys getting them out the same day. Yet if you're a conservative and you try to go stand for your president or stolen election, oh, you go to prison. No trial. No hearing. No constitutional rights. You're a terrorist because we say you are. But people are actually killing people with guns and bricks are not terrorists because they're on the other side. They're serving your agenda. By the way, Hitler did the exact same thing in World War II. Did the exact same thing in World War II as BLM. And by the way, just for the record, all lives matter. If you got to say, oh, it's only black, then you're being racist right there. You're being racist right there. You already destroyed your argument. And it's not wrong to say all lives matter. All lives matter. God created all of us. We are all his children. This doesn't matter. And to quote Martin Luther King, who was a great man, Martin Luther King said, you do not judge someone by the color of their skin. You judge them by the content of their character. That's what makes somebody. The content of their character. There's trash in all races, including white. There's tons of white trash out there. There's trash in every race. Now, that doesn't mean poor. You have a lot of poor people that are good-hearted people. Jesus even said, go spend time with the good-hearted people that are poor. You'll find much better people there than amongst the rich. That's a saying that they said was like passed down from the apostles and all words, small teacup tradition, but still, it's a beautiful thing. And I think there's a lot of merit to it. Power, money corrupts, and corruption. Lots of power and money corrupts absolutely. So I think that there's a lot of wisdom to that. Here's the thing: globalists, they want to divide us into different camps, into different groups. See, let me tell you something about prison. See, so I was a police officer, and when I started in law enforcement, I started working as a prison guard before I became a police. Well, I became a police officer as a prison guard, but then went on to becoming a state trooper. But I started off watching inmates. Here's something about prison. Do you know how in prison, if you go to prison, you have to choose a side, a gang, if you will. They're all divided. You won't survive if you don't. If you don't, you're just going to become like the new little rape bitch for everybody, or for the bad groups that are that way. All right. You have to choose a side. Usually whites go to like Aryan or white side. Mexicans go to a Mexican side. Blacks go to black side. I mean, it's like that. It's I don't create the rules. This is their own subculture that they've created. Okay. And they're constantly warring and battling against each other on the inside. There's a hierarchy and a status of authority and power amongst these gangs, just like there is amongst the guards and prison systems, just like there is in police, just like there is in government. It's always when you get to that place, you want to know they have a shot caller that they have the keys, and they're the ones that are like the boss in that group, in that gang, and you have to report to them. All right. And they're going to look at your charges and decide if you're worth living or not. You know, if you beat women, if you molested children, you're not going to live very long. And that's I'm not arguing with that policy. That said, why do you think the prisons allow these gang systems and to war with each other constantly? It's nothing but constant infighting amongst these gangs. And you have to always represent your gang or your chum food, your dust. Why do you think the prisons allow this? Easy. They don't have enough guards to control the prison. So as long as they can keep all the inmates subdivided and fighting against themselves over shit as stupid as your color of your skin, then they can control and manipulate you. They have the power. That's how it works. That's how it works in our government as well. That's why they create things like racial tensions, and why they started the whole the riots and all this kind of stuff. They instigate all that stuff. They instigate it. They gaslight it. They make it possible. And why? Because the more we're divided, the more they're in control. That's why. Even in the Middle East, why do you think constant fighting? You think that people always say, oh, we lost the Middle East. We didn't lose. We got exactly what we wanted. Exactly. Complete total manipulation and everything. And that's because we constantly keep the infighting there. And why are we constantly at war with some country? Always. Always have to be. Trump finally brings us home from the Middle East in a 20-year war that no American wanted to be in. The Democrats said, elect us and we'll end the war and bring our troops home. They get elected. The Republicans say, elect us, we'll end the war and bring our troops home. They get elected. I mean, just like a revolving door, nothing changes. And it shows you how we only have a one-party system. Two-party system is an illusion. We have a one-party system. And right now, that's controlled by the globalist communists. Period. End of story. Drop the mic. All right. So we have manipulation. And this is what this is. Maxine Waters. Remember how I said earlier, the left always accuses you of what they are guilty of? They're the ones that are staging conflicts to try to stop the election. So what do? They get ahead of that to control the narrative. And so they jump out here and say, oh, she's warning us of civil war and MAGA domestic terrorism. All right. Before the election. So that's gaslighting. That's trying to control the narrative. That's accusing us of what they're actually guilty of. Now, to counter that, you've got MGT, who is absolutely amazing. I love this woman. If Trump wasn't available, I would vote for this woman to be president, just because I would vote, not because she's a woman. I would vote for the best person I thought for the office and the job. And she is definitely one of the ones at the top of that list. Maybe not the only one, but she's one of the top. And I don't give a flying crap that she's female. I don't give a flying crap what her color is. I care about her character. I care about how she votes and what she will do to protect our country and our people. And that's what I care about. And that's what everyone who votes should care about. Not the color of the skin, not male, not female, but who's the best person that's going to save our country. And right now, our country needs saving, because if we lose this election, I tell you, our country is gone. And that's not an idle thing. It will be gone, and it will not be gotten back. Will not. Breaking exclusive, NTG predicts deep state planning civil unrest and war to conceal 2024 election. I say that is Trump's so popular in the polls. I say that that is probably one of the number one things they're planning to do. Think about this. Even if Trump wins, say somehow he wins, right? I absolutely believe in my tuition that they're planning to set off nukes, our own government in our own country, as a false flag, just to try to either put us in a war where he's pigeonholed into doing what they want, regardless, or they'll set off a nuke in a city just to make sure they eliminated him. And don't be surprised if that happens. Oh, a bomb went off that took up like 2 city blocks. Oh, how devastating. Oh, unfortunately, Trump was in there. Do not be surprised at all if that happens. Oh, and by the way, so now that they falsely accused Trump and are bringing him to prison, which, by the way, our country, I just got to say, our country has hit one of the lowest points of our history, and it makes me very sad as an American and as a patriot that loves our country and our people. It makes me very, very sad that we've come to a low point in American history where one political side will falsely accuse and attack and go after maliciously the other political opponent just because they're afraid of them as an opponent to go against for an election. That's all it comes down to. And even anything that Trump is guilty of, the other side is guilty of so much more, including murder and blood on their hands. Hey, you know, the Obama's cook was found dead, floating in the river. You think that's an accident? No, that's not an accident. You see patterns. When you're in law enforcement, you're trained to study patterns. There's patterns from one side, and so many deaths connected with that side, especially people that could threaten to go public with different things, or were writing a tell-all book. Wonder if that had something to do with it. Anyway, so we've hit a new low in our country. I mean, a new low when you're targeting your political opponents. I mean, that's what third world countries do. That's what third world countries do. And yet we're doing that in America? We're supposed to be above that sort of thing. You don't go after a sitting president for that, you know? And talk about petty ass crap on top of that. So here's the real threat. All right. Now, switching gears, but on the same lines, ATF recently passed a new law. Okay. Now, they're not supposed to create law, but apparently the Biden White House is behind this. Imagine that and supporting it. Well, they passed a new law which essentially makes all private gun sales illegal. Now, that doesn't mean they'll come after every person who sells a gun, but it means they can if they want to. And if they can't find another reason to, like, go after Trump for any real stuff, they can always say, oh, we can use this one and go after you. It just gives them an open door. And it makes all Americans potentially illegal to sell a firearm. All right. Now, if you haven't noticed, the ATF especially has become more and more communist, authoritarian, tyrannical communist. They just murdered a man breaking into his house. They said he shot a gun and then they shot him in the head. Well, yeah, what do you expect when people come breaking in your house, kicking your door down in at some, a strange time when you're sleeping in bed with your wife? Any normal person would grab a gun at that point and defend their family. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, all they had to do was knock on a door and deliver a letter. They didn't have to go in there and kill this man. It was murder. And yet, are any of those people held responsible? Lose their jobs? Go to prison over murder? No. Corruption, corruption, corruption. That's what it is. It's corruption. It's the loss of our freedoms and our liberties for more tyranny and more corruption. And there's no, hopefully, there's a lot of blowback about that ATF law. And it's really complicated. I've listened to a lot of attorneys try to explain it from different sides, and I just get more confused about it. I don't understand it myself. It's very confusing. They're trying to appeal it. They're trying to roll it back. I don't know where it stands at this point. I'm hoping it would be repealed because it's absolutely unconstitutional and against our freedoms, and it's ludicrous. I mean, look, if you're really an arms dealer and trying to make a living doing that without a license, which is just stupid. Why would you do that unless you're just a complete like street thug criminal kind of thing? Then I can understand it. But if you're not, if you're not really an arms dealer, then there's no reason to target or even have threatening worded laws that could target individual citizens just because they sell a gun. I mean, as long as they go through channels that are proper, like making sure that the person receiving it has to go through an FFL, has to go through a licensed dealer. They have to go through filing, going through the background check and all that. There's no reason that should be wrong or illegal as long as you follow that process. You're not just giving a gun to an unknown person. And it used to be legal where you could. But I'm not opposed to people doing security checks or following the law as far as that, or going through FFLs. I think you should always go through an FFL, but people should have the right to sell a gun and have someone go through an FFL before they receive it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's wrong. Not wrong. Okay, why does the FBI have heavy? Okay, so Biden made this comment. Who in God's name needs a magazine that can hold 200 shells? There's not too many magazines that hold 200 shells, even with expanded magazines. All right. Yeah. I mean, you're talking heavier duty stuff here. But Jones here says, why does the FBI have heavy machine guns that are belt fed? Now, those hold over 200 rounds that can fire thousands of rounds a minute. An A2 Second Amendment, he's referring to as A2. Second Amendment is not for hunting. Remember, times Democrats have threatened to drop nukes on Americans, which Biden has threatened to drop nukes and use F-15s to drop nukes on American citizens. He has threatened that. All right. So the point here is the Second Amendment was not given to us because of hunting rights. It was given to us to protect us from a government ever turning tyrannical against its people, as the whole show has been making a case for right now, that's what it's doing. And that's what we're in the topic of modern warfare. And also under that, I say it's your call to duty. It's a call to your duty. All right. I don't mean duty like what Biden does when he gives a stand and with Macron in France, dropping a deuce. I mean, your duty as a citizen is to stand up for our rights in a nonviolent way. But ultimately, one thing Kennedy said is if you don't allow people to protest in peaceful ways, eventually there's no other way than to turn to violent ways. But you create that. And I'm not calling for violence, but at some point, things are going to go ugly. The problem is you're going to wait till all your rights and powers are taken away and you don't have any chance to defend yourself from a completely tyrannical system that's putting you. You know what happened in the Bolshevik Revolution? They promised, if you just turn in your guns, we'll let you all go free. You know what they did? Most people turned their guns in. Then they went door to door assassinating Christians. Door to door assassinating Christians. That's what the communists did. Remember when I said earlier, communism and Christianity can't coexist? Cannot. And it used to be America was Christian, and we hated communists. We hated what they stood for. We hated everything about them, and we went to war to remove them from the planet. And now we're becoming an anti-Christian communist country. Not Russia, the United States. We should have all the weapons that the government has if we have a chance to defeat them. Unfortunately, our founding fathers didn't realize we would have the advancements in technology that we have today. We should have all the weapons that the government has, and these rights shall not be infringed. Okay, another part, switching gears, of modern warfare. Big Pharma, okay? Is there biotech food on your plate? All right. Cell cultures made in a lab. This is a big problem. Okay. Big problem. DOD, this Department of Defense, funded a company wants to feed U.S. troops lab meat to fight climate change. First of all, how on earth do you fight climate change because you're creating lab grown meat? Is it because you're stopping cows from farting? Let's talk about climate change there for a second. First of all, climate change was not the first term. The first term was global warming. Well, there was a little problem with global warming. Remember when back in the day, what was that Pud Knocker did that movie about change or whatever? I should have pulled that up. I forget now. It was the vice president or whatever did that movie Change. You know what I'm talking about, where he said that we would all be dead by 2020. Because of global warming. Well, guess what? That never happened. It was all a pile of shit and lies, right? Fear mongering, right? But they had to change it from global warming to just climate change, which is, just encompasses anything on Earth at that point, right? That's an easier title, so they pivoted and switched to that, right? I remember when I was a kid, that they were scaring the public, saying we were getting ready to go into a new ice age. That was the big thing when I was a kid. I remember watching the news as a kid and them reporting, "Oh, be afraid, be scared. We're getting ready to go into a second ice age." And so that was the thing. And then it's global warming, and then global warming doesn't work. So now it's climate change, just a catch-all for everything. All right. So, but we've got to remember earlier I said one of the tactics of the left is, you got to take away your freedoms, rights, and liberties to save us. You got to give up freedom to have protection. Who was it? Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Those that give up liberty for freedom deserve neither." Those that are willing to give up liberty for freedom deserve neither. Benjamin Franklin. All right. Our founding fathers, as anti-globalist as you can get. As a patriotic America, go listen to what the founding fathers had to say. And they all say there's no running the country without God and the Bible. That's something, see, that's what we've lost. And in losing that, we're losing our country. We're losing our values. We're losing our identity. It's what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a child, what it is to function in society. We're losing those idealisms. We're losing our cohesiveness as working together as people, as a culture, as a society, as a country. And we're being divided and manipulated so that we can be weakened for the slaughter, divide and conquer, the oldest military strategy there is. All right. So global warming, global climate change, all this crock of BS. They're saying that CO2 is killing our planet. That is a scientific lie. And I'll argue any scientist on the planet about that. And you know what? Many scientists will argue many scientists on the planet about that. Problem is, you only hear one-sided thing from a globalist controlled propaganda system and globalist controlled media system to back that up. And then, don't forget, if you do a search online, you'll find the fact checkers. Like, who in the F made the fact checkers any source of credibility? Zero. In fact, you can always know the truth just about 90% of the time if you take the opposite of what a fact checker is, true or false. Then you'll actually know the truth. They're not credible. Who's checking the fact checkers? And they're all controlled by the globalists who created the fact checkers. I mean, what crock of bull? And anything true, they don't want you knowing it. Anyway, CO2 is not bad for the planet. It's called plant food. Every summer here, it gets hot in the summer. And when it gets real hot, my grass grows faster than I can cut it. You know why? Because the plants are getting more food. They're getting, as the heat goes up, they're getting more CO2. They get more food and they grow bigger and stronger. It's plant food. The carbon that the left want to get rid of is life. Plants, trees, and ultimately human beings. We are the carbon that they see as a threat to the planet. And I'll remind you of Elon Musk, right? At one time, before he was threatened, Elon Musk was going around saying, you got to be careful of these billionaires in the billionaire club that I'm a member of. All right. He says these people are contacting entities, demons. In another quote, he says they're actually contacting demons. And he says they're connecting entities in other dimensions that are giving them information. And one of the things these entities are telling them, demons, is we will make you all gods, immortal, as long as you're willing to kill the rest of humanity. Imagine that. Remember when I told you earlier, every path of the devil is self-destruction. Self-destruction. And unfortunately, you have people that are stupid or even smart enough to be dumb, to be pawns, to be used to do the bidding of these demons when their real goal is the destruction, is the control, dominance, and destruction ultimately of humanity. If you ever want to know if something is good and holy or evil, this is all you have to do. Ask what's open to being life-giving and what's life-taking or life-closing. See? Sexual relationships that don't lead to new life, as in babies being born, it's evil. In the eyes of God, it's evil. It's all through the Bible. Many Christians don't understand that, but they're not reading their Bible or understanding God because it's written right there as a teaching for us. Anything closed to life is not holy and not good, without some rare exceptions to that. But as a golden rule of thumb, you can always follow that. What leads to life, what takes away from life. And you know if it's of God or not. Global warming is taking away of life. All right. Having cows, dude, cows have not been a threat to our planet and eating meat since the beginning of history all the way until now. How can just like almost 1-2 generations say that that's evil and we've got to do away with the cows and plant food? Oh, and by the way, this whole carbon thing that they're talking about, such a threat to our planet, it comprises about 3% of our atmosphere. 3%. Do you think we're doing anything that's really causing a dent in 3%? No. I'm not saying we don't affect it, but I mean, it's 3%. It's not causing the threat to our planet that they're claiming it is, that we've got to change our entire ways of life, including our diets and what we eat for their lab-grown meat and insects. Really? It's not about protection or control. It's about dominance. Well, no, I got to rephrase that. It's not about our protection and freedom and protection. And saving the planet. It's about dominance and control. That's what it all is. That's what it all is. All this stuff we've talked about tonight is that. Dominance and control. It's not freedom. Censorship. They're saying we've got to censor and have fact checkers and censor you online to protect people. No, it's not protection. It's control. They want one-sided control. They want a one-sided voice. That's tyranny. That's authoritarianism. That's what America fought against. We created America so that we would have free speech and not one-sided political control or propaganda from controls news agencies and censorship. That even dissenters have a voice and the people can decide what's good for them or what they agree with or not. Elon Musk said He bought Twitter, to create X, to save our planet. And he was not joking. And he said to save our planet so that everyone had free speech, including dissenters that he doesn't agree with. That's brilliant. That's American. That's what this was created for. That's the idealism we have to fight for, and against censorship, against communism, against control. So, where was I in the hodgepodge of crap? Okay, we ended off here. So they want to feed lab-grown meat, which I'm sure is, super healthy for you. Yeah, not. By the way, as I said earlier, that meat is made from tumors. Tumors. They want to feed you cancer cells and tumors. That's disgusting. They can keep all that crap. I'd rather starve. Oh, look, Gates Foundation awarded 4 million grants to fund digital ID. Okay. Earlier in the conversation, we were talking about some specific issues facing our country. Now I'm doing more of a general thing, issues facing our country that are just as important, but are bad. Everything is moving digital. Why? We already know they're spending money like there's no tomorrow. So what does that mean? That means they're going to create a collapse. First of all, a depression. And with that collapse, which means control, by the way, and not to mention death and depopulation, which is always a part of their agenda that they're always talking about in books and stuff that they write. If you read their books, like Tragedy and Hope, you got to read the stuff that they read and that they believe. To understand where they're coming from. Otherwise, it's so intellectual, it makes no sense. It doesn't make sense to a common person that just wants, peace and love and everyone to be happy. I mean, imagine. That's crazy. Those are crazy thoughts, right? That we can all work together and live together in peace, and that we can work to build a better society together. And, that's just absurd. We can't be allowed to do that. That's ridiculous. Where would the control be? Anyway, so everything's moving to a new digital system. And by the way, eventually that's going to bring us to the mark of the beast. And I'll be doing a show just about that in the near future. Illegal aliens. I threw this in there because every day there are news articles about illegal aliens and the drama they're causing. 2 police officers were just shot in New York by illegal aliens this last week. The news will never say that they're illegal aliens. This is, mainstream. Almost ever. This is a new thing that's going on where they're throwing themselves in front of cars to try to get payouts. It's a desperate move, but apparently it's working. So that's something you got to watch out for as a new trend. All right. Just wanted to throw that out there. People can protect themselves. Top Canadian university posts jobs listing that excludes white heterosexual males. Gee, what happens to your country? We just talked about exclusion, right? And how everyone deserves a voice and a say, even the dissenters. Remember, again, our country, I can't say this enough, was founded on Christianity, the values of Christianity, and it was against immorality, was against things of immorality, especially communism. All right. So how is it now that and it's for our country is always pro free speech. All right. How is it that you can and remember a few years back that a baker was sued because he didn't want to bake a cake for a homosexual couple, and the country went crazy. Activist groups went insane, and courts blew themselves apart writing decisions against them on how wrong they were and how discriminating that was and bad. Yet, look, only a few years later, and you can have entire universities that say, we're not going to hire you if you're a white male or a heterosexual. How's that not the pot calling the kettle black? All right. Is that racist? Can I say that? So you understand the point of what I'm trying to get across? And that's why I say, ultimately, that's why you can't allow this. Christianity and the opposite sides of Christianity cannot both survive. One will destroy the other. Will destroy the other. And I'm not calling for violence. I'm just saying they can't ideologically coexist. It doesn't work. One is taken over. And soon it'll be like this everywhere. In fact, speaking of, if you look at statistics, a friend of mine recently told me about a job promotion they were turned down for. Okay, they were told they were turned down because the person doing the hiring gets bonuses if they hire minorities. So my friend, who's got more time and grade, more knowledge about the job he's applying for, he gets denied so that they can get a bonus. His employer can get a bonus for hiring someone from a different nationality. Oh yeah, that sounds fair, right, and good for our country. Not to mention, talks about all the problems with the company, including safety issues because of doing stupid crap like that. By the way, I got friends in the state police, multiple friends that told you have more time and grade, you're more qualified for the position, you have a better, cleaner record, but we're turning you down for the promotion because you're white. And people said, well, John, that's BS. They could get sued if they did that. Well, guess what? I got one friend of mine that happened to not once, but 4 times. And that's only one person in the state police. I know multiple ones that's happened to, at least 3 or 4 that's taken place, that they told me that's happened to them in the state police. They were just told, you're the wrong color for the job. Oh, yeah, that's not racism, right? Oh, and I'm sure the department's better for that. No, it's not. Oh, by the way, again on this, I heard a statistic this week that they say that at the Ivy League universities in the United States, that 40% to 50% of the students at a lot of these Ivy League schools are non-American citizens. Gee, do you think that falls into weaponized replacement migration? Yes, indeedy. And who's getting hired for these jobs now in these corporate offices? Not white heterosexuals. No, that's bad. That's bad. That's only what created, our country, but now it's bad. And I'm not saying it should only be whites that did that, but you're targeting groups and you're saying that they're racist, but your result is you're going to be racist to them. You can't claim racism and then be racist. That's racist. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Replacement migration. I showed you these earlier on the UN's website. All right, it's 3 hours. Drawn to a close, but I want to throw a few more key points up here really quickly. Government. It killed 250 million people last century, but please feel free to lecture me over firearms, about owning firearms. Really? Who's the real threat to society? Government becoming tyrannical against its people, or citizens having arms? I tell you what, I remember listening to a general, U.S. general one time that said the only reason China has not already invaded the U.S. is because they're scared of one thing, the Second Amendment. And Americans have arms, making them a huge army, if you will. They said that's the only reason we haven't had a physical invasion by China. Let that sink in. By the way, they say that because of school shootings, we need to take away guns. So let's examine that logic real quick. Because there are crazy lunatics that threaten us with weapons, we as good, rational human beings and good citizens, responsible, have to give up our guns because there's crazy people out there threatening to kill our children. That does not make sense at all. I have a degree in philosophy, believe it or not. That is called a false preposition, false logic. It doesn't work. If there's crazy people threatening our children with guns, that means the solution is you need more responsible people that have guns that can counter that. That means if there's crazy people shooting up schools, we need more responsible people with guns, not the opposite. Case in point, why is it at all these school shootings, there's always stand down orders to let the killers do whatever they want? That's BS. If there's someone shooting kids as a police officer, screw what any supervisor says. Your ass should run in there and kill the damn shooter and protect those children. That's what you're paid to do, not stand down, which happens every time. All right? So that's BS. By the way, in the whole Sandy Hook thing, I remember listening to a former FBI agent that was hired by a family to investigate what took place at Sandy Hook. You know what happened? The FBI agent retired, came out and said, I'm going to stop doing this investigation, and I'm going to tell you why. He says, because some federal agents approached me and said that if I keep investigating this and talking about it publicly, that they're going to have me killed, executed. So he's like, I'm going to stop investigating the case. He's like, the more you dig, the more things you find, including people paid off over certain things in that town and all. So he says, but I'm not going to do the investigation anymore because I believe these threats are real. Imagine that. They never produced the footage. They keep saying it was because of ARs. The person supposedly had an AR, but all the initial reports were that they used handguns and the AR was left locked up in the car. But then later they say, oh, that's not true. He actually had it. But we can't show any of the footage that we have from all the cameras to prove that. Yeah. And law enforcement, we call that a lie. All right. You call it a lie. When you change your story, we call it a lie. All right. Just like Building 7 on 9/11. And it gave 4 different excuses to what happened for the same event. That's called a lie. Okay. So again, I'm trying to make the case that it's because of tyrannical government. It's because of crazy people that we actually need more guns, not less. And we need guns in the hands of responsible citizens. Just because there's crazy people that threaten our children doesn't mean that we need to take guns away from to be able to defend reasonable people to be able to defend themselves responsibly. All right. Of course, we're always advocating gun responsibility. All right. Of course, training, responsibility, licensing, whatever. You need to be safe if you're going to do it, but it is a duty. It is a right. And we should be protecting our kids. Case in point, there was a shooting. Remember the Asian kid that shot up a bunch of kids, 22 students at a Northeastern university years ago? 22 kids died because one kid pulled out 2 pistols, all right, and no one could defend themselves. Well, they didn't tell you about a story that took place at a university close to that area in the Northeast just a few years prior. A kid pulls out a gun and starts shooting everybody. Several kids there had guns. They pulled guns out on the violator. They stopped him. Guess what? Guess how many people died? 0. Why did 0 people die? Because responsible people had guns and protected the innocent people. That's the solution. More guns in the hands of the right people. That's the solution. You know, there were towns in the Wild West that had so much crime, they made it a law you had to carry a gun. Guess what? Crime went away. Once everyone carried guns, crime went away. Imagine that. Imagine that pickle. I can tell you, as a former law enforcement officer, the safest way to protect you, your children, your schools, your community, your society, and your country is that responsible people are trained and are armed and do their civic duty to do so, and do not allow the infringement of their rights. Because if you don't fight for your rights in nonviolent ways, then you have none. If it's taken away, it's not given back, almost ever. So we have to stand for our rights, or you won't have any rights. And you don't accept the bullshit of, oh, for your safety, we got to take away your freedom. No. That doesn't work. That's a trap. That's a false preposition. It's not logical, and it's a trap. And like Benjamin Franklin said, those who were willing to give up freedom for safety deserve neither. You Okay. If you're for gun control, you're not against guns because the guns will be needed to disarm people. So it is not that you are anti-gun. You'll need the police guns to take away other people's guns. So they're very pro-gun. You just believe that only the government, which is, of course, so reliable, honest, moral, and virtuous, yeah, right, bullshit, should be allowed to have guns only. There is no such thing as gun control. There is only centralizing gun ownership in the hands of a small political elite and their minions. Damn. Damn. That's a quote if I ever heard one. And it's true. That's the truth. There's no such thing as gun control. It's only an excuse to take it from the responsible people and put it in the hands of the real tyranny and authoritarians. But I digress. Let's see what others have to say on the topic. Hey, look at this. Oh, crap. That's really small to read. Children need to be taught the real history of the world. They need to know what happened in the past when only the government had guns. Biden administration urges Supreme Court to let cops enter homes and seize guns without a warrant. Ooh, that sounds smart, right? Yeah. Like any responsible person, if someone broke in their house suddenly, unannounced, it is, you know, your first thing is to defend your house and your family. I mean, that's just murder. Yep, getting ahead a little bit. Oh, let's hear what the Führer had to say. To conquer a nation, first disarm its citizens. Oh, wow. Look at that. The man himself, Hitler. In order to conquer a nation, you must first disarm its citizens. Well, imagine that. Our government's becoming more and more tyrannical and communist, and they want to take away our guns to protect our liberties. Right. They're not following this man's advice. In a democracy, you believe it or not, if you believe it or not, in a dictatorship, you believe it or else. You remember how they said that, in a democracy, the government fears you. In a dictatorship, you fear the government. Yeah, that's where we're at. I don't know if I can read that. Totalitarianism, a government that controls or attempts to control the totality of human life and expects complete loyalty to the state and its leaders. That's what the left is screaming right now. All right. Withholding information is the essence of tyranny. Control the flow of information is the tool of a dictatorship. Another brilliant quote, because that just described our entire mainstream media and its governmental control. It's all propaganda, and you should not be following it. Support independent media. Look at this, Mao Zedong. I always ask people, who was the most evil person to live in history? And everyone's conditioned to say Hitler, and that's far from true. Hey, he was a very bad guy, but that's far from true. Look, Genghis Khan. Look how many people he killed. All right. I could throw up a bunch of names, some very politically charging, so I'll stay away from that. But this man is a lot more. Mao Zedong of China killed 1 billion of his own people. Hitler never came close to that. And it's even more evil to kill your own people, I think, to a degree. I mean, that's pretty nasty. But as opposed to even, demonizing another race, which is wrong. But to even kill your own is like that's a whole nother level of craziness. Mao Zedong was basically put into power by the Rockefellers or in the Rothschilds. Okay. They created modern China. They gave them our entire manufacturing industry that has screwed us over and made them the superpower. And it was all done on purpose. They're the ones that created the communist China. They're the ones that created the communist model. And why? Because it's the beta test for what they plan to do for the rest of the world. China was the test, all right, and it was controlled. There is some infighting between China and the globalists right now, but ultimately they're the same side. And this whole social credit score that they're doing in China, that's also the beta test for what they plan to do to the rest of the world. That's why I showed you the thing above by Mr. Bill Hates about the digital ID, which will be connected to a social credit score. So they'll tell you how to spend your money. How nice. Okay, withholding information is the essence of tyranny. Control of the flow of information is a tool of dictatorship. Yep, I just played that from this guy above. I didn't know I had the quote in there twice, but it's so nice. It's definitely worth hearing twice. Here's Ronald Reagan. If fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. And yeah, we can certainly determine that that's true. Oldie but goodie, the people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. That's important. And that brings us to the end of our 3-hour talk lecture discussion on modern warfare. All right. That didn't cover everything. It's too big, too complicated. I hope, though, it brought up some key points. Let me look through my notes. You will find that the communist globalist system right now that's governing our country, they're also controlling not just our entire media with all mainstream media, but they're also controlling, I should probably save this for another show, but I'll touch upon it right now. They're also controlling our entertainment. Right now, in entertainment across the board, you're seeing this thing called DEI, which is diversity, equality, and inclusion. And that sounds really nice on the surface. But what it means is we're getting rid of all Christian values and we're going to target white people as being bad, the enemy, and we're going to replace them. And when you're doing that, it's racism. Now, it's not to say that you can't have people of other cultures and women and all that and strong characters. I'm all for that. But do it organically, not because of a political agenda. And they want to always scream it's not an agenda when that's a complete effing lie. It's an agenda. It's an absolute agenda. Then you see all these works at Disney and all these movies that are bombing. It's not because people have hero fatigue. It's because we have DEI fatigue. And that's why all these movies are failing. The girl boss concept, it's getting old already. I mean, it's just getting trash. And like I said, it's not that you can't have strong female characters. Dude, Ripley in Aliens, that's a badass chick, man. She is awesome. I would follow her into battle anytime. But she doesn't just come across as a man either. She just comes across as a strong female and amazingly so. And it's organic. You love it. You know, she doesn't come across as, oh, I'm going to whip every man's ass. That's 3-4 times my body weight. That's not reality, you know, but she's still a tough, intelligent, independent woman. That's a real boss. You know, I love that. Dude, Michonne in The Walking Dead. I loved her character. That was a badass chick. She was awesome. Can I say chick? Is that demeaning? That was a badass woman. And she was awesome. She's beautiful. Love Michonne. She was awesome with that sword. But she still didn't come across as a man, whipping every... You lower a woman by trying to turn her into a man. That doesn't mean you can't have tough, strong women out there, you know? But you don't have to make them into men. Like in the new Mad Max movie that's tanked at the box office. For that very reason. It doesn't work. It's not realistic. People aren't engaged to that. You know, you gotta come up with story movies. Look, I worked in Hollywood. I wrote a movie. I'm trying to get it made into a film. All right. Movies have to be about story. And yeah, all stories have teaching principles and values. That's what makes them good. If it's done right, if it's done organically. But if you just try to force agenda on them and turn it into a propaganda piece while you're saying you're not doing that, then it becomes soulless crap that no one wants to watch. And that's why all the movies are bombing at the box office, except for Barbie, which is the one exception I just can't explain. I just don't understand it. Barbie's like the most successful movie in all of history. I mean, my mind can't wrap around that. Now, that said, Margaret Robbie, hey, she is amazing. Love her to death. Ryan Gosling, Love that dude. He's awesome. Anyway, but you get the idea. But right now, and that's why every movie and television, it has to be DEI, diversity, equality. Now, like I said, that sounds good on the surface, but what it is it's racism, and it's wrong, and it's making agenda over content and story, and it's a big fu to the fans of these. Like Disney just buys up the most beloved franchises and then turns them into their propaganda machine, dude. And you wonder why all the fans are like pissed off and don't want to watch your trash. And then what do? You got the audacity and nerve, instead of taking self-responsibility and saying, sorry, we made a bunch of crap, and you blame the fans for not bending the knee to your crap. I mean, how does that make sense? And look, to all the critics out there, whether it's in film or video games or whatever, of this DEI stuff, because there's a lot of great shows out there, like was it the Star Wars Theory channel, which is awesome. What's really Snarky J? Is that right? She's got a great show. I love her stuff. On when they talk about these stuff. There's some other really good ones. Those are just two that come to the top of my mind. But that said, they understand that the DEI woke stuff is making everything trash. What I don't think they understand is it's being done on purpose. Who owns Disney? Look at the board of Disney. It's BlackRock and Vanguard are at the top of the board. They don't care about losing money. That's all a scam. They only care about creating their agenda to control the youth and society into their manipulating system. They're in control across that and the whole board and the media and everything else. So it's no wonder they're doing that. Tim Allen was kicked off of his very successful show. It was canceled, The Outdoor Man, after Home Improvement, just because he came out as a conservative. You want to talk about equality, diversity, and inclusion? If you don't agree with their one-sided woke communist values, you're canceled. How is that diversity, equality, and inclusion? That's a lie. If you don't step in line with their one-sided communist authoritarian view on everything, you're kicked out. You're censored. You're fired. You're not included. So everything they say they stand for is a lie. A lie. Same thing in the video game world. Okay? In the video game world, you have the same thing going on from the Star Wars franchise and everything else. But on top of that, you got Warhammer. Henry Cavill just backed out, or is trying to back out of his role in Warhammer, which is his passion project, which he loves. And fans got excited that an actual fan was heading the production of that. But he got sick of all the DEI forced woke crap that doesn't fit the story or the fans at all, but changes it all to the point that he's like, it's just going to make it crap like everything else. And I don't want to be a part of that. And it's not what the fans want. It's a manipulation and an FU to the fans, just for the sake of agenda. And that makes it wrong. Ryan Reynolds with Deadpool. Man, he's been fighting a war with Disney to try to keep that movie good instead of just being a bunch of woke crap, you know? So these are important issues that are affecting. They control the media. They control the government. They're controlling now the judicial system, the intelligence system. They're controlling now the justice departments. They're controlling banking. They control media, and they control entertainment. And we have the majority's on our side. Even most of California and New York are actually red conservatives. The problem is the strongholds that have the biggest voice in voting blocks are blue, and they ruin it for everybody else. There's more of us than them with this system, but they have the louder voice and they've got the positions of control. That's how it works. They infiltrate and take over the top of a pyramid, and then they control the whole structure below it, and we're stuck at the bottom wondering what the hell happened. What happened? Once you allow corruption at the top, it's game over. It's game over. And that's why America is fallen. That's why my flag is cracked, torn, because that's where we're at right now. Corruption, 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 corruption. Not what our country was built on, which was Christianity, Christian values. But now it's the opposite of that, with the immorality and communism and socialism, two sides of the same coin, like I said. So I just want to make sure I covered everything in my notes. Yep. Yep. Okay. Yep. I think I covered everything. So the bigger picture, like I wanted to point out, is that one last point. They're removing Alex Jones from his show that before the election. They're removing Trump as best they can before the election. They're removing Trump's advisor like Steve Bannon before the election. They're still targeting General Flynn and Roger Stone prior to the election. They removed Mayor Giuliani prior to the election. There are a lot of key players they're removing prior to the election, which begs the question, what are they planning prior to the election if they need all these key people to be removed from having a voice, having a say prior to this? And this is the reason why. This is the reason why right here. So people, you better be praying for your country. You better be praying for our politicians on both sides. Pray for the ones that are doing bad to do the right thing. Pray for them to become better people. Pray that we all come together as a country. We're not divided on color, race, and skin, but we come together as a people and find a way to work. And demonizing white people, this whole white privilege thing, that's just creating more division and racism. That's not the answer. The answer is that we come together as a people. We find, it used to be when all immigrants came here, it was a melting pot because we all had the same American values. Even if we disagreed on religion and different topics, we all wanted the American dream. But that's no more. Now they're bringing in people that hate America and want to see its destruction, not including all the soldiers they're bringing here that are UN soldiers and guns that they're bringing in for those soldiers or Chinese troops. That's happening too. A whole another side of this that I've briefly talked about before. We didn't even get into tonight, and that's happening. So what are they planning with that? Because they're planning some massive things to go down, and it does not take much. We have normalcy bias to think that our country, because it's always been, always will be, and that's not the case. It only one major event, and we can lose our country forever or our freedoms. So I don't say that to scare people. I say that to try to unite us and try to call for us to try to unite with each other more and to try to stand for idealisms that made our country great as it was and as it should be. And that meant our value system, and that in large part was due to Christianity. So you see the decline of Christianity, you see the decline of our country. They go together. So anyway, I want to thank everyone who's joined me on this path. Please keep me in your prayers as well, and pray for our country. Pray that we find ways, like I said, to come together instead of be ripped apart and turn against each other. See, we won't make it apart. We can only make it together. So, and there are evil forces at work right now, and unfortunately, our government is supporting those evil forces. So, it is what it is. We got to call it what it is, and our American duty is to call that out. Regardless of reprisal or fear of what could happen to us for doing that. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is we do the right thing, and the right thing doesn't mean a majority vote. All right. Moral principles do not depend on a majority vote. Wrong is wrong, even if everybody is wrong. Right is right, even if nobody is right. That's from Monsignor Fulton Sheen, a great saint who hasn't been officially canonized yet, but should be. But if everyone's wrong, it doesn't make something right. And if everyone's right, everyone thinks they're right, it could still be wrong. We have to be on the side of right. And today, too many people vote from emotion instead of instead of reason. That's another major problem. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in and patience with me with the show. You can contact me at HarbingerReport.com. You can contact me at HarbingerReport@yahoo.com. And I hope everyone's doing good. See you till next time. Keep the lights on. End. Go away.